back. I, as usual, have my tea at the ready, but I'll talk about what kind of tea it is once we get everyone in here because today is These Are the Questions Day. We have Hexic said he should be free, so I expect him to be popping in any moment. And we also have an additional guest that I teased prior. Um, Let me just give them a quick ping. The guest that I have scheduled to come on is a very busy person, and so is at a meeting at present and is trying to like finish up as soon as possible. So we'll as soon as he's ready, we'll get him in here. And otherwise, we just need Hexic. Today will be a little different for that, and so we'll be doing a little bit of learning. But in case you are unfamiliar with what we do here in These Are the Questions, the idea is we want to practice philosophy. It is my position that philosophy is not a collection of facts. Knowing what Kant said is not learning philosophy, it is learning history of philosophy. Philosophy is, to my mind, the process. Much in the same way that science is not the collection of facts, it is the process by which we obtain knowledge it obtains scientific knowledge, right? The mechanism that the process by which we can learn things about the universe, like the collection of facts that we often call science. And so the idea is we're going to be asking often very silly questions, but just giving ourselves practice with philosophy and doing the thing. In the past, I've been quite heartened because while the questions have often been very silly, which is intentional, we have found it not difficult whatever to find the connections to the real world and the implications that our conclusions have beyond the silliness. It's one thing, you can talk about, the idea of like what would it be to do like to go back in time and kill yourself or whatever. Um, but it's another thing to say, well, if we would consider killing your future self murder, is not suicide a version of that? And what are the political ramifications of that? That happened in a previous These Are the Questions episode. So we will definitely be dealing with stuff that becomes more. Oh, I shouldn't say becomes, but we'll be dealing with stuff that we will find extrapolations to the real world about. Though that said, today's question is likely to be more direct than others. I see Hexic is ready, so let's get him in here. Oop. Just as soon as Discord wants to cooperate. Hello, Hexic. How are you doing?
Very good. Yourself?
I am doing well. So, oops, I actually accidentally had the question flash up on screen. I don't want to give spoilers or anything. Uh, I think I mentioned to you prior that we have a guest scheduled for today. He is wrapping up a meeting, so he'll be joining us, he said, within a few minutes. In the meantime, I was just going over what we do here on These Are the Questions, but we can jabber on a bit for a couple of minutes while we wait for him to be ready. I have my tea. Do you have tea to hand?
Oh, yes, I have green tea. It's still a little hot
Ooh.
for me, so I'm waiting for it to cool off.
It's funny. I have the same thing. So I have a mango peach tea that I made, and
Ooh.
it is also too hot. But I still like as soon as I mention it on stream, I'm like, well, I should take a sip. That's part of like I don't know. I should demonstrate that there is tea in this tea. I don't know. Uh, it's funny too.
All
The
right,
tea.
kampai.
Sorry, what was that?
Kampai.
Oh.
Ouch.
um. Yeah, and it's funny too because this tea I have is I don't have to do this to myself. It's intended to be able to be made cold brew. You should be able to put cold water with it. But I figured it's getting a little cooler. I should have some hot tea, and I prefer to have this tea hot anyway. So I could have saved myself from the scalded tongue, and I chose not to. This is entirely on me.
Oh, I hate when you get that like ironed out feeling with the scald,
Oh yeah,
Like you
yeah,
just
yeah.
swear it's all flattened out or something. Just shing,
And you can
like
just
metallic feeling.
you can just feel the lack of sensation on your shoulder. You're like, I normally am able to feel when I do this, and I just can't. Yeah. Ooh, it's not great. Thankfully, I didn't burn myself too bad. It's just a little bit. This is why you wait for your tea to cool. I could have avoided. I also have more iced tea I could have made, but again, I was just like, yeah, you know what? I don't want caffeine, so I'll make this herbal tea as opposed to the having the black tea, and it should be warm. It's just this cavalcade of things I'm doing to myself that I just don't need to. I just don't.
Ain't that just the way?
Yep. Such as it is. Well, hopefully our guest joins rather soon. I guess I can mention who this is now that the surprise is evaporating. Uh, I've had him on before. I did an interview with him to talk about his work with Pico, California, the which is California's largest faith-based organizing political organization group. Right? I don't know exactly how they brand it. I'm getting the wording wrong for sure, and I'm guessing he'll correct me at some point exactly what they are. But is a friend of mine. His name is Calvin, and he does a lot of political work. Like that's his job, is to make the world better politically, or at the very least, the state of California. And so that also means that we're going to be asking the question I have planned for us is a little more slanted towards that axis. It's going to be a little more overtly political. I hope that's okay with you, Hexic.
Sure, sure. I'm
And
sure I'll be most interesting.
oh, for sure. It's definitely an interesting question. And, like with all of our other, these are the questions, things, we haven't ever moved off of the initial question we've asked. But if we ever feel like we're just running dry on stuff to talk about, we can ask another question. If you don't find it very interesting, we can try something else. It's not, we're not married to any of it. The whole point we, is that we're doing the philosophy. If we find that we have nothing more to say about it, forcing ourselves isn't helpful. Um, we might as well move on to something else. I often
Hmm.
think of it as like intellectual exercise. We're just practicing. We're asking a stupid question, or uh, or in this case, it's not a stupid question, but it's a question asked stupidly. Um, which, by the way, this came from someone in my Discord. I don't mean that as an insult. That's the whole point of what we're doing here. If anything, it's a compliment to say that it is not a stupid question because that's what we do here. We expected a stupid question, and that's not what we got. But it's still a good one to go over, so we will. It's just a question it's asking a very real, or asking something very real in a very silly way, or in a
So it's one
very
of the
like
suggestions,
fantastic
huh?
way, I guess is a better way of putting it. Sorry, what was that?
So it's one of the ones that were suggested in the Discord.
Yeah, if you want to spoil yourself and take a guess, you can poke around there.
For
I do
oh,
like getting the questions from the Discord because
nah,
while
nah, uncle.
sometimes it's a little hit or miss as to whether I think the question would make for a good topic of discussion, it is nice at least that I'm not coming up with it, that it's coming from someone else. Other people's ideas are being involved in this, and that helps greatly. Which is another reason why I wanted more people to join us for these, because while I love talking with you about it, Hexic, one of the things that makes me love talking about it with you is that you're another person. If it were just me, I would have less than half as much to say about it. So, and with you, we have, it's greater than the sum of the parts. And so adding more people, I'm hoping, will have the same effect. All right, it seems Calvin is ready. He is ready to pop in. So let me move him right over to the stream room. Hello, Calvin. How are you doing today?
Hey, what's up?
I did
Hello.
a little bit of your introduction, just letting people know, like, oh, you've been on here before, and
Cool.
this is some
Yeah.
of the work you do. Is there anything else you want to mention about that, or
Uh,
completely up to
no,
you?
no, man. It's cool. Whatever you introed, I'm sure is wonderful.
Okay. You
Um,
have misplaced confidence in me. I'm. That said, we were also talking about tea that we have to hand. I have some mango peach tea. Do you have any tea ready? I know I suggested to, but I don't know if you actually wanted to make
I
any
was
tea.
gonna say it when you texted me, but
Hmm.
like I'm a little bit of a heathen on this channel. You know me. I'm coffee. I'm coffee guy.
I mean, that's okay. That,
You
that's
can just
that's.
call me. You can call me coffee guy. Like I don't do, even though I'm Persian, which is tea is basically in our religion. I don't like
I've
tea that
seen you
much
enjoy tea.
unless I'm sick. I love
Hmm.
coffee. Coffee's amazing.
Well, do you have any coffee to hand? At least having a neat beverage.
Yeah, hell yeah. Well, you know me, Adam. My coffee of choice is a an Exxon tanker of black iced coffee, which is like the Trenta from Starbucks, which is the biggest one.
Right, and it takes you all week to drink it.
Yep. It's the bumps of cocaine aren't legal, so I'm gonna do this instead. So that's why I'm drinking, Ernest.
Well, yeah, I guess I guess that's one way of doing it. And it's also not that weird either, given that I was actually just reading some articles on stream the other day about different tea making, and among what was involved in that was like some teas that you cook, kind of in the same way that you make
Oh
certain kinds of
yeah.
coffee.
Yeah, my grandma, well, not my grandma, my like a family friend, but in Persian culture, like everyone's your grandma or
Yeah.
your uncle. He would do a cooked tea type thing. So I know what you're talking
Like chai is like that, and there are a few others.
about.
So,
Yep.
coffee, especially Turkish coffee, is kind of made in that same way. So it's similar-ish, I guess. Um, well, that said, I mentioned to Hexic just now, and I mentioned to you when I was getting you ready to come on, that the question we have today is a little less silly. It's actually a pretty real question, but it's
Oh,
asked in a
cool.
kind of fantastic way. Part of the reason why I picked that was, one, it's political leaning, and that's the work you do, so I figured you'd find it more interesting. But also, I've mentioned on the channel before the concept of now what philosophy, which I'll
Yeah.
admit now that you're here, I got from you, right? The idea of philosophy of like, okay, sure, we've determined reality isn't real. Now what do we do? How do we
That
change our
was
lives?
the nickname I gave to existentialism when I was finishing up my philosophy degree. I was like, this is really cool, and then I was super into it, like every other like edgelord who's 16 and likes Nietzsche. And then once I like got to a certain point in reading existentialism, I was like, this is basically just now what philosophy. Like, okay.
Yep.
Oh,
And
like solipsism, everything's in your own brain. Okay, now what? Cool, whatever. Who cares?
And I find that a lot of metaphysics is kind of like that too, but
Yes,
we
yes.
even though we've had a lot of now what philosophy discussions in these segments before, I feel like we've derived interesting questions for the real world from them. Still, this one's going to be a little less slanted in that direction. So without further ado, let me read off the question. It's a bit of a longer one. This one comes from the Discord from someone who goes by Sohi Rifter. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Maybe Sohi Rifter. I'm not
I'm,
exactly sure. The
I'm
question
sorry. Say
is
it again. Wait. Say it again.
the name of the person in the Discord.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's the name of the person that in my Discord who submitted this question is Sohi Rifter. Again, not sure I pronounced it correctly. But the question is, all of your political goals and/or ideas are in a single bill, and it's about to pass in Congress. You can have it all, or just about, because it comes at a cost. You can have everything you want, politically speaking, but black people have to sit at the back of the bus, or maybe gays can marry. Some group will have a marginalized social status as like part of this bill's passing. Your
Ooh.
congressman is the final vote. He trusts you. You reach for the phone and make the call. What do you tell them, yay or nay? And asking to further negotiate with that congressperson will lead to the bill failing. They'll say it's not worth the argument. We're off of it.
Mm.
So ultimately, the like crux of this question is what concessions are you willing to accept for your political goals? And it's asking it with the specificity of marginalization as being a repercussion. As I usually do with these questions, I've unfortunately thought about this a lot. I try not to, but I can't help it. So I'll give someone else the chance to weigh in first before I add my ideas.
I'm gonna ask you a weird question, Ernest. Can you either put that somewhere textually so I can see it,
Yes.
or like repeat it? Like that helps me a lot if it's okay, just
No
because that's a
worries.
very
Yeah,
loaded question, and
it
I like it a
is.
lot.
And there are a lot of there are a lot of questions that come up from it. And in fact, I was going to ask the poster to clarify some of what they meant, and then I realized that's not how we do things. Normally, when we have questions about details, we just answer all versions of it. So that's why if you're watching, I know I asked you if you would want to clarify some of what you meant by the question, but I just thought, you know what? Why don't we just handle those as we get to them? One of the
Hmm.
things that came up for me, at least, while Calvin, you're wrapping your head around it, is the is kind of a conflict in that one of my political goals is racial equality, or ideally racial abolitionism, but like barring that, racial equality. And so it would be, in a sense, impossible for all my political goals and ideas to come to fruition while simultaneously having this racial bias in it. And so that was like a concern I had before. Again, I don't want to color too much before y'all have your chance to say something about it, but that was an interesting thought that we'll get to, like a split in the road about eventually.
Color too much. I get it because we're about to take away.
Okay, that's not what I was trying to do, but yeah, I guess that's there.
Also, first of all, can I say, So High Rifter, you're about to get me fucking fired, bro. Thanks a lot. Like you're having someone's gonna
Well,
pull
what
up
would you say
later
that would get you
in my
fired?
career. They're gonna be like, "Did you hear that guy said he'd say no gays if we could have universal basic income?" I'm not saying that. I'm just
Not yet anyway. Well, we'll get to that. And so like that's part of why I
Mm.
changed the question a little bit. It's also a little bit it's slightly altered, very very little, but slightly but altered still from the original way the question was asked. I modified it a little bit to make it well, one, a little less incendiary. Some of the phrasing was worse, but also like I recontextualized of like what you're willing to accept, because the specificity of currently marginalized groups being further marginalized is a little bit more incendiary than what's at the heart of this question, right? Which is about what concessions you're willing to accept.
Mm.
But as I say, either of y'all want to weigh in on like what your initial reaction to this question is, what your initial thoughts are on it are before I start going off about it.
Can you
Hmm.
introduce me to Hexic first?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I'm very sorry.
So-
I just like jumped in. I'm like, I know both of you. I'm very sorry, Calvin. This is Hexic. He's a friend of mine and Amazon Canes. Hexic. This is Calvin. Thank you so much for both of you. Hexic is the one
Hello.
whose idea it was to do these segments, so he
Nice. What's
is
up, dude?
the co-host.
Hey, Hexic. How's it going, man?
Hello. Pretty good. Yourself?
Good, man. Okay. All right, now we can do it.
Sorry
Oh.
about that. I just completely because I'm like, oh yeah, I'll always.
No,
Oh,
no,
and
it's all good.
I forgot to mention to you, Calvin. I mentioned this before you hopped on. We haven't yet done this because we always find something to chew on with these questions. But if we find that there's not that much we want to say about it, we can go to a different question. So as long as we feel it's worth talking about any given question, that's how long we spend on it.
Okay.
Mm. All right. So if I want recess all day, it has to have that consequence in specific. Like
Uh,
if it has nothing to do with the consequence at all.
so yeah, like it's you can kind of think of it as there's a writer on the bill. The bill was designed to do all the things you want, but there's a writer that says also, this negative consequence. Either the examples given are black people having to sit in the back of the bus, or gay marriage being illegal. But we can just say some sort of group marginalization is a part of this. I guess the funnier version actually is that the bill was intended to do the marginalization thing, and as a writer is all the good political goals that we want.
Hmm.
Let's see. Is this consequence magically enforced, or is it as enforced as things are usually enforced in the real world?
See, that's the question. One of the questions that I wanted to ask Soe
I
Rifter
think we
is,
should probably assume that it's enforced the way everything else is. I don't think we
I think
should
so.
assume like a fiat. I think it's more like it's another amendment to the bill, for example. Like the example I'll put out for when I think about this question is like, okay, social housing and universal basic income at a sufficient living wage for every man, woman, and child, um, regardless of documentation status, magically is a bill. Let's
Mm.
just call it like HR1. And but HR1's amendment is that um, male and female bathrooms have to be exclusively for biologically born members of the male and female sex. That's how I imagine this. Like that would be my example of this question, if that makes sense.
Wait. So is it supposed to be good X and then bad Y, or is it like good, or is it like bad?
No. It's your dream policy, but one amendment to the bill is one group must be marginalized in some way. I'll give you another example.
Okay.
So, universal healthcare. So no surgeries cost nothing, medicine costs nothing, but
Magically, or
it's as a bill. It's as a
enforced through law. I think that's
as a
probably the easiest way
normal
to
it's as a
approach it.
normal legislative bill. You can even say it's like a constitutional amendment if you want to say it's stronger. And then, but an amendment to that is women lose the right to vote. Right? Does that make sense? So it's like dream policy plus intense marginalization for one group.
Right.
oh, that's
That
a
is
dream policy.
that is
Interesting.
basic.
The good one. The good one
basic
for
of the
universal
question.
healthcare would be a dream policy for me, for example.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
And
I
the
was getting a little
questioner
confused.
starts by making it the most extreme. It's not merely one good political policy that you want, it's all of them.
Yeah,
Which
all of them. Yeah,
which
right.
is which is good as a testing question in that it says like, okay,
What is
maybe
your
you
dream?
wouldn't be willing to give up, maybe you wouldn't be willing to accept marginalization in exchange for something small, but what about all the possible good things? Like, are you willing to accept this kind of concession in exchange for everything you could want, which makes it really testing.
Hmm. And there's no lawyering out of it with like the dream thing being
Nope.
like negating the.
The
Nope.
specifically the question says if you try to negotiate, the bill fails.
But like, what if that was the thing you wanted to pass in the first place? Well, I guess it's not a thing right now. So
And then something to
let's
note also
see.
is that the way the question is worded is that it's not saying that the opposite will be the case. It's not if this bill fails, all the things you want will become illegal or anything like that, so much as we will simply remain as we are. It is the status
Oh, cool.
quo versus this thing, which is kind of interesting because I think for a lot of liberal people, and I mean like capital L liberal, not how we use it in the U.S. of just people left of center. I think a lot of like liberal people would prefer the status quo to
Yeah.
a big change that has a thing they don't like.
So I'll actually jump in here if it's
All right,
okay. Um,
take your shot.
so I don't. I'm not actually going to go into theorizing about what the bill would be or what the devil's bargain of the writer is.
I think that's fair.
But I think that this is likely something that I would err on the side of advocating for. And here's why. If all of my, for example, personal political goals and ideas were to become enshrined in law, I know that this is a little outside of the scope of the question, but seems like the purpose of the exercise.
Mm-hmm.
I feel overwhelmingly confident that the society and economy of belonging and care and inclusion that would come from that passage would invariably lead to the elimination of social marginalization. So as an example, I tend to believe a lot of racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia comes from scapegoating.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of the reasons why people care about the crisis at the southern border is because the economy is really bad. The economy is precarious. People's wallets are hollow. They have a lot of housing and income insecurity, and so their choice is that you need to have a scapegoat to some extent, and the right is really good at making us not want to scapegoat corporations because they're entrepreneurs, and so it's easy to scapegoat homeless people or poor people or immigrants. My thinking is if everything that I would want as a political goal or idea were to pass, you would just get to the point where you would see the like futility of marginalizing people based off of race, class, or sexual orientation.
Uh, I
That
think I mostly agree with you, but I'm gonna play devil's advocate a little bit here. This is what you've described isn't what I'd call class reductionism, but it at the very least resembles it slightly, right? The idea of when other problems go away, issues like racism will evaporate too. I wonder, do you think maybe that some of these social divisions need to be have to be addressed directly and cannot be addressed otherwise? Because I agree, like a lot of these social divisions are exacerbated by material conditions, but I wonder if that's always the case. Would it still be maybe that there can be racism and therefore people
yes,
okay
of
with
course,
that kind
yeah.
of social stratification irrespective of their lives being better?
So what's interesting about that question is like, well, first of all, yes, of course that's possible. But second of all, usually the relationship flows the other way.
Mhm.
So, for example, like a lot of liberals point to like Scandinavia as robust social safety nets that allow for like universal health care and education.
Mhm.
And a lot of really good social psychology actually shows that some of that comes because of racial homogeneity. So like because it's just like eight guys named Bjorn, you feel like you're feeding into a tax system or into a social safety net of people that you associate with or that you're close to in some way or you affiliate with them based off nationality or race or whatever. When you have more of like a melting pot the way we do here,
Mhm.
sometimes it's easier to divide people by race and class, and thus you create material conditions that divide people further. So I think absolutely it could. I just think, I mean, you know me, Ernest. Like if you were to put all my political goals and ideas in one bill, like, gosh, I just think the world that could create, like the Rawlsian paradise that could create,
Hmm.
could intense marginalization exist in that society long term? It's like it's almost I could almost pose the counterfactual to you and feel as confident, which is if you live in the most desperate, perverse society imaginable, but the laws enshrined equality and illegality of of racism, sexism, and homophobia, could that last? Like, I don't think so. Like, I think if you live in a society of precarity and poverty and waste and corruption and filth, and it's just the worst possible socioeconomic conditions,
Mhm.
but the law said you have to love everyone and you can't discriminate, there's no fucking way that lasts. It just doesn't because I think I think those two forces, so like socioeconomic precarity and social, racial, and economic justice, I think they're so closely intertwined. One kind of invariably leads to the other.
Well, I definitely agree with you. I think that makes a lot of sense. I also happen to think that these things cannot last anyway, right? I don't think racism has an indefinite future. I think that's the kind of thing like it might take thousands of years or whatever, but I think it can be done away with. But the question I think to me is a little bit more of can that be done away with without direct action toward that end? Because while certain things make it easier or harder, the question is can it be done if you just let it simmer and if people aren't necessarily working at that change?
Hmm. Is this to say that, um, let's see, how should I put it? The best way to handle all the isms would be from bottom up? Like, we're skeptical of the bill's ability to do most of the work?
Well, that would be top down, right, Hexic?
Yeah,
You're
that one would be top down.
yeah. So I
Mhm.
think so. I I don't actually know if that's baked into the question. Like, I think one inherent problem I have with this question is actually exactly what Hexic is saying, is that policies are only good as the public will behind them.
True.
Like, you do either do either of you know about the concept of like the Overton window?
I'm familiar,
We
but
can review it.
it also, in case my audience isn't aware,
Yeah,
please.
so the Overton window is basically it's a theory about how things eventually come to be policy um in in most societies. And it's like an idea, whatever idea that is. Let's say free money from the government. It exists along a spectrum of acceptability. So it can range from unthinkable to acceptable to popular. And the closer it is to popular, the more likely it is to be policy that is durable, meaning it's policy that will last. History has shown that if a policy is not popular or even seen as sensible, let alone acceptable, even if it's enshrined in law, the the forces that be are very adept at basically reversing them.
And
So
oh yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So I just don't know how feasible. Like, I think this is a super cool question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much I would say beyond that, because if my dreams were to pass, for example, and right, like, you know what I mean? There's so many competing like thought experiments here.
Yeah. And what I will say
So
to
for
your
the
oh,
Hmm?
if you don't mind, what I will say to your point is something that it's like this is demonstrable in a way of like that makes this kind of encouraging. I don't know how better to put it, but like for example, the "Don't Say Gay" bill in Florida, as written, is a bill that could have teachers being sued by parents because they mentioned that they're in a heterosexual marriage, because it is an instruction, like it is a discussion of sexuality in some way, but understanding that that isn't popular and so won't happen, but it is popular to be like transphobic or homophobic, and the opposite will happen, that if you mention having being in a homosexual marriage, that you are decently like there's a very real risk of those consequences, is exactly why the bill is worded that way, is as you're saying, like the popularity has that direct impact. So maybe even what you're getting at is, in the world laid out by the question, all of your political goals and ambitions come to fruition, and like there's a legal mandate that, for example, black people have to sit in the back of the bus. Perhaps people wouldn't even care to enforce it. Is that kind of what you're
Yeah,
getting at too?
that's exactly. It's either that people wouldn't care to enforce it, or that socioeconomic conditions being that idyllic would. So this kind of goes into a core belief of mine, which is that our natural the natural direction of idyllic conditions is social progress. So I think this, like, a lot of society bears this out. Like, the the gains of the civil rights era were largely only possible because of the socioeconomic gains of the New Deal. Like, there's a lot of examples of this throughout history, which is like when people are living in a decent society. This happened under the Roman Empire too. It's like it's just a very common thing in history. When people are living in ideal socioeconomic conditions, scapegoating and social ostracization tend to just be lower and be seen as like nonsensical, like, over time, notwithstanding certain things like religion and stuff. So, like, yeah, I think I just can't imagine a world that's idyllic socioeconomically, but people were like, nah, but fuck those people in particular. Like, it just, it's not that it can't happen. It's just very counterintuitive.
And I know Hexic, you
Hmm.
were trying to jump in. Let me give you a shot before we talk over you too much more.
Okay. As for the Overton window, does the popularity of the idea, like once it reaches that point where it does become one, like an actual policy? Let's see. even if something doesn't work, does it still last longer because of it?
Well, it shifts with time,
Um,
right? Like abortion like the range of acceptability in abortion has ebbed and flowed over years, and whether it became law or not changed, not necessarily in directly accordance with that, but at the very least, like how acceptable it is to push back on it is
yep.
it has changed as opinions have changed on the matter.
But like, what if it's more of a short-term gain, but an overall loss over time,
So
and then
that's
it's
yeah.
essentially unsustainable?
That's
Does
exactly you're saying, Hexic. What you're saying is right. Is that if something is not if something doesn't have broad popular policy, the law tends to be a short-term gain that doesn't that isn't durable. So like a very good example is um, bills like pro LGBT bills, for example. There have been bills that provide more rights to people regardless of their sexuality since the 60s. But I used to tell this joke when I taught classes is that like the most powerful force for narrative change in my lifetime has been Will and Grace. Like, and like it's kind of it's tongue in cheek, but like the show Will and Grace, I know there's probably a lot of younger people, but it was a show where it was like a straight woman and a gay dude living together, and it was just their everyday life. They weren't like extraordinary. It was just like they were doing normal stuff, and it normalized having a gay neighbor or a gay roommate so a lot. And so like you start seeing LGBT bills in the 2000s as you're seeing more LGBT representation in movies, media, it becomes so much more commonplace. And the idea of being homosexual was so much more acceptable and sensible that once laws started passing, then they basically have stuck around and it's very hard to overturn them. Whereas when pro LGBT laws were passed in the 60s and 70s, when being gay was pretty much unthinkable, they were very easily overturned or they were toothless or they weren't really powerful laws because there wasn't social political will behind it.
Incidentally,
this
you kind of reminded me there's been a lot of instances of that, including because I've heard of the Will and Grace one. One that you might not be familiar with is actually in the 70s, I think it was. There was an episode of All in the Family that was very that like was had a gay character and was like treating her like coming to the understanding of, well, she's family, treat her like that. And it was like the day before a bill that I forget exactly what the bill did, but like a bill that was like very pro gay rights went for a vote in California, and because so many people were swayed by
Yeah.
this, in part, is like that bill passed. And so we
Yeah.
see this all the time.
Yeah. Yep.
But what if the popularity, like the thing that is popular, is literally, uh, well, I don't know, to put it simply, impossible. Like it goes against gravity or something.
No, that's funny.
Like,
I mean, that is
it gets
something.
through because everyone agrees on something that couldn't possibly work. That gets pushed through anyways, and then we find out the consequences, I guess. Does hmm, the lasting effect only last as long as it works?
Yeah, I think the question functions the way the political process would be. So I don't if a senator passed a bill that said like
People can fly
California's a
now.
black hole now, like I don't think yeah, like it would be like, well, that's
Well, to
cool. Like
concretize it a
But
little
like,
bit, because I think the question is a good one, Hexic, is there are some political ambitions that can't be accomplished with the stroke of a pen, or at the very least, not merely in the United States. So, for example, anarchism, and I don't consider myself an anarchist, but anarchism is a good example here. The idea that we should have a world without um, unjust hierarchies, that we should squash power to be as equal across the board as possible. Well, if you're an anarchist and you want that world to exist, it from every anarchist theory I've like ever heard about, that requires international adoption of those kinds of systems. I don't know what those systems look like. That's why I don't say that system. And so, okay, you can sign anarchism into law, whatever that means, in the United States, but only the United States? Does that actually get you where you're wanting to go. Um, I think it's similar for socialism, and I do consider myself a socialist, but I'm not sure to what extent that requires um, international agreement. And so maybe like in that way, it's not a magical thing, but the stroke of the pen still can't make that happen.
I guess
Yeah.
I'm just more worried about like everyone agrees X is the way to go, and then we make X happen, and we don't have any little caveats like, everybody else has to agree too. And like, let's say everybody did, and then over time we find out it actually straight up doesn't work for
Oh.
unforeseen reasons. Like we thought we had it down pat until we found out, I guess, through the force of its own gravity, I guess.
Yeah,
Uh,
I
yeah,
think the question is more like your personal paradise. Like I don't think this is like your world in So High Rifter's question is probably different than mine. It's probably different than Ernest's. I think it's more of like almost like a personal thought experiment, right? Is that how you read that?
I guess it would be something like, what is my dream plan? I guess.
Mm.
Right. That's a
But
good
like the
question.
other thing too, it's like, wouldn't it be funny to like prove it once and for all that whatever this idea is works or
Mhm.
not?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think it's an
Yeah.
interesting
That'd be
thing to
cool.
explore too, right? Because while, we can abstractly say, the paradise we have in our minds, I mean, we all know none of us knows best about, like, I'm definitely wrong about what some of the prescriptions I have being good ideas in a political sense. It seems to me, Hexic, and correct me if I'm wrong, part of what you're asking is, okay, how binding is this? If one of if some of my political goals are actually really bad ideas, well, now we're getting this marginalization on top of a bad idea. Like, what do we do about that? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, something like that. What if there's like a unforeseen consequence here to ourselves, anyways, and it causes more marginalization, more chaos, and we're just in the worst place, like worst place than from the status quo from the question, or even like the uh what the bad end from actually getting our uh policies through, I guess. Like
And
the
this
consequence for this is yeah, that part.
and
Mhm.
some
Do you
of
know
it,
what
like you
would
say,
be a
is unforeseeable.
sorry.
Like, sorry, I know
No,
it's
no,
gonna
no.
keep happening. Like, even for people who like capitalism, it's impossible, for example, that like the Dutch East India Trading Company, one of the first capitalist companies that was powerful, right? They could not possibly have imagined a world like today where you have international megacorporations who have more wealth and power than most countries. You know, even if they liked that, even if they liked what they were up to, they might not have foreseen where it went, and maybe were like, oh, maybe I'm not as on board for that.
Mm,
Do you know what would be a fucking hilarious version of this question?
Hmm.
yes.
The reverse of it for conservatives. So like you get to win the culture
Oh,
wars.
that's funny.
Okay. Good for you. You win the culture wars. You know, man woman bathrooms, no fault divorce, whatever. All your
But
culture war
socialism,
shit.
like
But every socioeconomic policy that you absolutely cannot stand comes to
open
pass.
borders happens. Like,
Open borders, universal health care, universal basic income, universal pre-K, 12 weeks of paid family leave. Like, fuck you. How about that? Like, just try-
and I think they'd have the same problem, right? Of, well,
yeah,
some of their
they would.
political interests are like open borders is a political or is a illegal policy
Yes.
that would be
Yes.
like they would say, well, that's not all of my political ambitions if we have that.
Right.
Um, One thing I think that might make
Hmm.
this question a little bit more interesting, because I agree. I think once, like, if you're in the camp of, yeah, that seems probably like it's okay, then there's not a whole lot to discuss.
Right.
One thing that might make it a little more interesting is the understanding that we're also, as much as it's a yes no binaristic question, there are probably degrees of comfortability that we have with it, and talking about it in those terms might be helpful. I'll admit, while I think if all of my political goals happened, the world
Oh,
would be
sure.
much, much better, even if there was this marginalization, it makes me uncomfortable. I don't like it. I really don't
Yeah.
like it. And maybe we could talk about what would make it more or less make us more or less comfortable with it.
Ooh.
Hmm.
And I'll start that because I already have the idea in mind, and y'all seem to be chewing on it a bit. For example, we've talked about the marginalization happening. The only groups mentioned are groups that, at the very least, I am not a part of. And so that actually makes me more more apprehensive about it. I don't like the idea of signing someone else up for marginalization. That feels too like I don't know. It feels like cruel. Like, well, it doesn't affect me, so who cares? Weirdly,
Yep.
I think I'd be more on board if it was something
Who
that
was me?
affected me. You know, like I'm a
That's actually
colossal
so
dipshit.
true.
If it was colossal
Yep.
dipshits have to sit in the back of the bus, I think I'm weirdly more on more on board with it.
Hmm.
It's funny you said that, Ernest, because I was just thinking like I was just rethinking my answer because I was thinking of like post World War II America,
Mm-hmm.
where like you have the GI Bill, you have the New Deal, you have like the socioeconomic conditions were actually pretty fucking awesome, but like God, life was so bad for people of color and
Yep.
women and immigrants
It
and
was
gays.
awesome
It's
for the
like
people who weren't getting shit on.
it was awesome for the people who weren't getting all that good shit, and it
Yeah.
was actually, you know what I mean? And yes, like, did that lead in some way to
Oh, I
this?
think you
I
might
think
have.
you're right. I'm on board with you. If it was, I'm a lot more comfortable marginalizing myself for my own political gains than someone else. I'm totally on board with that.
By myself, do we mean us individually
A group that
or
includes you.
whatever our group
A group
that
you belong to.
mm,
And it doesn't
the
necessarily
one
have
that
to be
you
on
say
racial
you
or
belong to,
lines.
or
It doesn't.
gotcha.
Yeah, just like some group of like I use colossal dipshit as a joke, but you know, some group that like for me maybe it's like white people, you know, or like magic players, like some group that's like substantial to which you belong,
Mm.
and I put it in nebulously because I don't also want you to be like, all right, well, I'm part of like, you know, I'm not
Yeah.
asking you to out yourselves or whatever. But the point is like, if it affects you, if it affects a group that includes you, does that change your willingness to accept such a concession? For me, it makes me more
God,
willing,
please,
but I can imagine it being
please
less.
put, please put every debater on the back of the bus. Please, for the love of God. Please,
Will you talk
God, the
about
world will
putting
be
them all
such a better
together that
place.
like they'll be can you imagine the amount of
No,
swaying and swirling and
God. You know what? While we're at it, I like this exercise. Debaters aren't allowed to vote. You just fuck all of us. We're just the worst.
Hmm. I guess where I'm thinking,
Mhm.
where like this could go is something like, what if the addition of things, like to what we have right now, it's like a what booting an older version or something. The same kind of, if it could be said that any progress we made is kind of built into the possibilities allowed by the previous metagame, let's say, like how you're implying how the conditions during post World War II were what made, I guess, civil rights era and whatnot inevitable. Does that make sense? It's like if we keep the dream policy open enough to more or less undo the consequence of it. Like, okay, let's say the dream policy is something like uh, all men are created equal.
Mhm.
Wow. And then it's like, would that not eventually evolve into a place where the consequence for making this happen also goes away in order to fulfill itself entirely?
Mm.
It sounds a little bit like what Calvin was talking about, and I think I agree. And in fact, I was holding this until it seemed like we were kind of out of stuff to say because I feel like it ends the discussion immediately. Part of what makes me really okay with accepting a deal like this weird like deal with the devil kind of thing is I can say, yeah, I would accept that, and immediately go to work on passing a bill that undoes that segregation
Yeah.
or that marginalization. Immediately go, okay, well, this is just a law. We can change that too. We got everything good and one bad
Yep.
thing. Let's work on the bad thing.
And that's exactly like that's why, yeah, like, not to cut this discussion short because I still have
It's
like
okay.
time, but like, yeah, like that's exactly how I see it too, because it's like, and then think of how much less difficult it would be to reverse the bad thing once everything else is awesome. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
who do you have to blame? Like a lot of marginalization, like I said, again, it comes from scapegoating and blame. If you have people are happy and fulfilled and, you know, healthy, like, well, no, but fuck them. It's like, that's, come on. Like, over time, that's just not a reasonable position that most societies take.
I guess for me, it's like I'm trying to game the policy so that it wouldn't need another policy to undo it. It's more
Mm.
like it solves itself, because
Oh,
then I
sure.
would think bottom up would probably be more efficient slash more longer lasting. Um, let's see. But then that would make it open maybe to being undone altogether.
Yeah, and that's kind
But
of what I
I guess
was
that's the
thinking.
cycle of civilization, I suppose. You get it right, forget how it happened, play around. Oops, fell off a cliff. Got to start over.
And I think what this question in a lot of ways comes down to is your political outlook, and it seems like, at least for me, and it seems like you two agree, but I won't put words in your mouth, that if most things are good, I'm optimistic about rooting out the last thing that isn't.
Yep.
Um,
That,
and just like a
that's good.
general optimism with that. Though I guess there's a bit of hesitance as well with the understanding, like, because I really do agree with the Martin Luther King quote that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Oh
Which is
yeah,
why my general
big time.
response was like, okay, then like immediately get to work dealing with that last injustice or whatever. But it is a worry. It is scary. It's not something I'm happy about or comfortable with for sure.
The other, I will say, not to totally fucking skirt us in the other direction here,
It's fine. Do it.
the risk you're taking is, gosh, it's like incalculable, because here's the counter here's the counterpoint. Everything's good now, with the caveat that fuck these people in particular. Okay, right? We won't be specific. Now, once you imagine how much that solidifies the bigotry of people when you try to change things, because now the status quo is amazing. There's no impetus for change. Why shake things up?
Oh
Look
yeah,
how good things are now that these people are, fuck them. Like,
it's kind of how you get
see,
the 50s.
I can see
Mm.
Bowtie Carlson just off at the mouth. Like, I've been telling you for years that diversity is not our strength, and now look, this is this, and now this is amazing. It's like, and now these radical communists want to take us back to like, you're risking what there is a huge risk here, actually, that the perception flows the other way, which now you're not to, I know this is, I'm Godwin's lawing it, but like, now you're in like Nazi territory. Like,
Yep.
we, like, for the preservation of the good of our people, we cannot allow these people anything, and in fact, maybe worse. Like, that is a huge risk the more we talk about it.
Yeah, I guess this all assumes that our ideas even work. It's like, okay, we think we're gonna marginalize some people, but what if we end up actually, annihilating everybody?
Right.
You're right. Like the net, it's like, okay, the congressman who takes this, like the people who are on board for this bill are like, all right, cool. We got marginalization of black people. Next let's do gay people, right? It's just
No, it's more
uh,
like, we think our ideas are perfect, but when put into action, it killed everybody and not just
Oh,
marginalized somebody. It's like, oops.
Like this shit doesn't work. Yeah, that's kind of a.
It just literally doesn't work. And it killed everybody. The end.
And
Have a
I
nice day.
definitely agree with what you were saying, Calvin, about like the risk of complacency and also like just keeping things as they are. I mean, not to overquote MLK, but that's another one people like to reference from lettering from a Birmingham jail. Like the white moderate prefers uh, an
Yep,
unjust peace to a disruptive justice.
that's right. Yeah,
I think I'm
and
paraphrasing
well
significantly.
now you're mixing the worst of both worlds in a statement. Now imagine you have a just like an
Did you
you're
cut
really
out or did you?
risking.
Oh, I think you cut out.
Yeah, I was just saying. Well, now you have an unjust peace that is idyllic, and so now the status quo is more attractive than ever.
Yeah. I guess it would just need that much more work. Maybe actually that makes me. I don't know to what extent the questioner intends for us to be able to choose the marginalization, but I wonder if maybe if we could choosing a marginalization that includes more people would incentivize more change. So like the example of white people, at least in the United States, white people are the majority. If more than half of the country has some sort of marginalization that they're saddled with, maybe they're like, you know what? Maybe let's do something about that. More likely than it's like, well, some number of people will be like, it's just black people and everything else is fine.
This is the Black Panthers gun control problem, right? You like the NRA is staunchly against any form of gun control. The most powerful gun control legislation that's ever been passed in the history of the United States is when Black Panthers had AK-47s on the streets of Oakland.
And the
Like,
NRA was like, it was out there like, you know what?
they were like,
Maybe
"We're
we
out."
should dial it back.
You should see, oh God, some of the memos from that time that were like, you can't just have weapons of war on the street. You're threatening. Like, it's like, well, what? Yeah, I mean, I think you could probably mess with this question to get your desired outcome. That's
Mhm.
probably my final answer. Like, depending on how much control you have over the conditions of this question, you could probably get some kind of optimal outcome out of it, depending on the level of control you're allowed. But without talking to SoFi, we're not sure how much control we actually have over the question.
Yep. Which is why I also
I'm
was
like,
interested asking him
oh, yeah.
on, but he said he wasn't available. Sorry, go ahead, Hexic.
I'm like, bet, let's do it. But then I'm just like, how do we make it so that what? I don't know. I think where I'm leaning, what my actual dream policy would be something like taking things away that are already baked in, like things that are in the way, if that makes any sense. And then the core of it would just allow it to solve itself, the so-called marginalization. It's like we'll have another civil rights because it wasn't like done with altogether because my dream solution did not, make it impossible to do so.
Mm-hmm. I'm
Something
not
like that.
sure I
It's like here's
understand.
freedom of speech or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Here's freedom of speech. I made it possible that it's actually like, respected. And then
It sounds like
it's gonna
Hexic
happen
is
all
saying
over
something
again. So
similar to
it's
what
like, what's up?
I think Hexic, you're making the same kind of procedural logic argument that Ernest and I have been making, which I think we kind of all
Seems like we're all on the same
relatively.
page there.
Yep.
Sort of. I kind of hear like your guys are adding to it as opposed to subtracting, and I wonder if that's actually like a different, uh, what political idea? I guess I'm not sure.
Interesting.
Call it ideology. It would be pretty interesting. It's like, oops, I'm possessed by whatever, but it's like I don't have any other word for it. But the approach is, I guess, what's worrisome or like I think the difference between it working or not could be the approach. And then I see the fork being, policies that add versus policies that subtract.
Sure. Yeah, that
And
makes
it's
sense.
a trim the fat kind of thing. It's like, that's probably more my style. But then it's like, I guess to get all into it, it would be like, what exactly are we trimming off? But
Right.
since we're talking in broadness, it's like, oh, okay. The point of this question really is to get down exactly what we believe, and it's like, I wonder what that means for me. That my attitude would be something like taking things away, so that there's room for, I guess, all the good things to be able to generate themselves without me having to be like, granting it through law.
More of like a libertarian stance.
Hmm.
Like almost like if you the less you impose on people, maybe the better things get naturally.
Something like that.
Sure.
There's a degree
Not
With
to that.
quite.
fundamental
That's,
rules or
yeah.
something.
I mean, there's a degree of that that's definitely
Something
true.
like that.
I just
That makes
realized
sense.
too, and this is like a little bit. It's a little bit more to like the meta of the question than the question itself. As I'm realizing that, Zoe Rifter, I don't know how to pronounce it. Did pay us a bit of a compliment in the way he phrased the question, in that the like you get everything you want except assumes we're anti-racists and that we're
Right. I was just gonna
non-homophobic.
say.
I was like, because I was just thinking like, what if you ask this to like a KKK guy and you just be like, so there's no downside? Cool, that's great, that's awesome.
Sweet.
Like maybe for him the butt is maybe for the KKK person it's like, oh well, they're only in the back of the bus. I don't get to kill them all. Like maybe that's the problem.
That's
Uh,
funny.
but I do. I just realized the like kind of compliment that was there. So I wanted to make sure that was we're on the same page on that.
Thanks, SoFi Rifter, for not assuming we're all total shitlords.
Listen. This is the internet. That is. I mean,
That's true.
we
That
weren't
should be the
called
default,
literally
really.
Hitler. Like I don't know that there's higher praise.
Man, true.
Hmm. Should we go there on purpose?
Okay, so I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like we've kind of reached our terminus here of what we want to talk about it, and perhaps like the question was too concrete, and that's why we did that. Does anyone else feel like there's more to talk about on this subject?
I
No.
guess I have a question. So I keep hearing the scapegoats part. Um, are the scapegoats, in your opinion, arbitrary? Or is it like a
Oh,
mountain out of a molehill kind of thing?
It's like
Where it's like the
semi-arbitrary, I
target of the
think.
scapegoating is in fact like involved with the problem.
so I think that's likely a loaded question. I can give you my opinion.
Hmm.
Um, I think often scapegoats are much less of a part of the problem than scapegoatists would have you believe.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
So, like, I
What
think
was it? There was I think it was
so,
Sartre.
like,
There was like that famous quote of
yeah.
like, if the Jew didn't exist, the anti-Semite would invent him.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. So, like, to your point, Hexic, like, okay, I'll give the example again of like of like the border. Like, is like, could we have more sensible like border control policies? I guess I'm sure we could. Are are illegal immigrants more of a drain on the economy than Amazon not paying their taxes? Like, no way. Like, that's just factually and demonstrably incorrect. And so I think whether or not you think the problem, the people being scapegoated are quote unquote part of the problem, they're almost universally not as much of the problem. They're usually when people are or scapegoat others, it's usually as a distraction tactic to kind of to pry away from the actual problem.
And
Is, I
some
guess,
amount
what
of the
I'm saying.
time, like the problem that's supposed to exist is only a problem, but like it doesn't actually exist except for the if it weren't for the distraction. And what I mean by that is like when it comes to, for
Right.
example, immigration from South America and Mexico into the United States.
Mhm.
Often there people from there are scapegoated as like, oh, they're taking all these jobs and lowering wages. Well, they don't lower wages. Bosses lower
Right.
wages.
Exactly.
and like that's they're not actually causing even the problem associated with them isn't being caused by them. It's being caused
Mhm.
often by people who are interested in distracting, so that you don't have to worry about like, oh yeah, maybe we do need to like brush off those antitrust laws.
Yep. Does that
So
answer your question, Hexic?
I guess this brought just a few smaller questions.
Sure.
Let's see. So then, if it's a distraction, then that would mean that it has nothing to do with it.
I
Like it
don't
could
think
be
it's.
interchanged with anything. With the quote earlier of the Jews didn't exist, the anti-Semite would make them up. Is that to say that we can just like replace it as a variable?
Sometimes. And I find it often goes back to like what is comfortable in history. So like Americans are far more likely to blame black people for stuff than they are to blame like Hungarians for stuff. Like, it's just there's that history there. It's kind of why every conspiracy theory on the internet, yeah, coincidentally always has Jewish people as the masterminds of it all. It's almost like
Wow.
anti-Semitism has gone back millennia.
Right.
It's like semi-arbitrary, at least to my mind. There's reasons for stuff, but those reasons don't have to make sense. And sometimes the reason is, well, you already hated this person. Let's like make up a reason for you to do it more.
Let's double down.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's also why I say like
And
flat
like
earthers when they do their like conspiracy nonsense and they point it at Jewish people. It's like they just already hated Jews. It's not because they have a reason to think that Jewish people are involved in it. It's they hated Jews. They hate this thing. They blame Jews for it. And often it goes in that direction.
yep. And like the other thing I'll say, Hexic, is like most things are generally not all or nothing. Like when scapegoatists create like issues out of whole cloth, usually there may be a kernel of truth in it, right? Like I just think if you give those kernels of truth more credence than the actual problem, you're basically feeding into dangerous opposing arguments, if that
And
makes sense.
and as an example
I
of
guess
that,
my
like,
worry is that.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, what was that?
Oh, I was just gonna say like, because I'm reminded of an example of that, and I feel like examples often help people, but like not for you, but for the audience to like understand stuff. Like as an example of what Calvin was just talking about, like Nazis, and I mean Nazis in
Yeah.
1930s Germany, blame Jewish people and were like, oh, they control the banks or whatever. The nugget of truth is that Jewish
Right.
people were
Right.
more present in banking positions than
Yeah.
like disproportionately present in those positions. The reason
Okay.
for that has to do with anti-Semitism, but it's true. The
Yeah.
extrapolation of therefore they're controlling the banks and bringing down Germany is absolutely not true.
Yep. Yep. That's right.
Mm.
So it's
So
like,
then,
what are you allowing your? It's basically, I don't know if you've ever heard of the term permission structure, but it's like, what are you allowing to be popularized? What are you allowing the Hexic, are you familiar with like the term narrative? Like what narrative are you allowing to be dominant? Usually usually narratives and discourse are a zero sum game, which by that I mean they tend to be one gets some kind of credence over the other is what I mean. Like it's not if you're allowing people to blame immigrants for economic problems, they're far less likely to then go look at the taxes of Jeff Bezos. That your people only have so much bandwidth for blame. It's very difficult, for example, for people to see Wall Street and gay people as the reasons that society's in collapse. So you're often having to compete for people's like ideological bandwidth, and so you want them to key in on the most harmful root cause.
hmm.
Right, does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess the bite-sizedness of something to spread, it could lose a lot of information along the way, and then
Exactly.
eventually it gets like hot potato. I mean, telephoned into something that
Yep.
is, doesn't work.
Yep. That's
I
exactly.
guess my concern would be something like is this to say we can't solve both problems, or that illegal immigration isn't a problem?
Part of
Yeah.
Something
the
like
part of
that.
the
Well,
thing is like
yeah.
what the problem is, right?
Like there
Because
wasn't any problems in there.
I agree that illegal immigration is a problem, but the problem isn't the immigration part, it's the illegal part, right? If the people who were immigrating illegally could just do so legally, I think a lot of the problems would go away. But of course, it's framed as an illegal immigration problem because often the people complaining about it have a problem with the immigration part. They don't want the brown people in the country. And so like
Hmm.
the framing and the scapegoating like has a lot to do with like why people think about these things the way they do. I'm not even sure that I'm answering the question, but that was the thing that came to mind when you were talking about it.
I guess I wonder if it's messaging as well. Like, let's say somebody's rather mild mannered and isn't very incendiary at all, but then at the end of the day, the policies are tackling the real problems associated with illegal immigration and Bezos' taxes. But at the end of the day, the solution for the illegal part would be something that someone not as mild mannered, saying incendiary things, what has been advocating, if clumsily, for all along.
Mm.
And then it's like, do we have to do away with it altogether just because there's idiots here, or
Yeah, this is. I mean, I
like should
think
we stop listening to this point just because some people
you're.
are very clumsy?
Yeah, no, you're making a good point. I think it's obviously ideally you solve all the problems. Unfortunately, I just don't think like media discourse works that way. Like we're often asked to choose. Not that we're asked to choose. That
It's
a
just
lot of
that,
this.
yeah.
Well,
Um,
a lot of this goes into like human psychology, Hexic. Like
sure, sure.
it's so it's not really in our nature, I would say, to see all solutions to an existential problem created equally.
I
Does
guess
that
my
make,
uh,
does
I
that make
guess my
sense?
worry is something like when we have arguments against something, if we're not just arguing at the extremely dumbed down version of it, it's like we jump to, oh, we don't want brown people. It's like, huh?
Mm,
Is that really the core of it here? Like
sure,
we can be right against that, obviously, but then
sure.
it's like we didn't really solve anything or actually address the issue.
Good point.
Something like that.
Good point. It's a good point.
Yeah.
Like I get confused. It's like, how did we get here again? Or is it like we're attacking the boogeymans of our own imaginations as opposed
Yeah,
to theirs, or theirs that turn to ours? And then it's just like this boogeyman being passed around back and forth.
totally
And
agree
it's like,
with
who is that guy? None of us saw him. None of us made him up either. It
you.
happened at the process.
I totally agree with you.
And then we're going in circles. And then it's
It's a
like,
hard thing to avoid for sure.
I guess, hmm, my attitude would be like, if we were to give this person all the credit in the world and not like assume isms, I suppose, it's like, what point could they possibly be making? Let's give them a fair shake. Let's argue for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mhm.
here's database ways. It's like, or however much you can do it, being layman and whatnot. It's like giving them the credit. What could possibly be their legitimate grievance here?
Mm.
Do I agree with it? And I simply have a different solution for it? Or do I disagree with it altogether as opposed to assuming that's the case?
It sounds a little bit
Something
like what
like
you're
that.
talking about is the principle of charity, right? The idea of like
Yep.
you should try to interpret in the best possible light what someone else is saying, because like what they want isn't necessarily like just because they express themselves poorly or even in a way that just in a way that you interpret it a certain way doesn't mean that that's actually what they're trying to say. And it's tough. Like it's something that I think is
Yeah.
a real problem that people don't employ nearly enough.
We tend to give
Yeah,
people actually the least possible charitable interpretation of their own beliefs or words.
especially
That's
in like
very true.
the context of debate, which I deal with a lot on my
Oh
channel.
yeah.
It's just like it's like the internet is the worst for that. It's so bad. And in fact,
You
I
could
think it
have
was
cut the carter
last
work.
week I saw a debate devolve to the point where after the openings, one of the speakers left because it was just so bad. It's so bad faith, and so um,
Wow.
like his opponent was just so clearly not there to actually listen to what was said, and instead like to make up his own view of that.
That is somehow not surprising.
The surprising
And
part
yet,
is it's the person who walked off is someone who's put up with a lot of shit before. So like the fact that he did is
maybe
one
they
of those
were
like
just done.
yeah, like do you know who Matt Dillahunty is?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's who left. Like
Oh wow.
he's put up with a lot of
He
bullshit.
puts up with a lot of bullshit.
To get him to storm off is you have to do something
Pretty
pretty
intense.
incredible, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen it, watch my video where I review that debate. That said, it seems like we've kind of reached the terminus on our discussion of the question. In fact, our last several minutes of discussion have just not been about it at all. I guess.
You sure?
Well, it's been on like tangential stuff, right? Like it's not really answering the question so much as talking about related topics, which is fine. If we want to do that, we can keep going. I just wanted to suggest, just ask the question: are we content? Do we want more to say about it? So on and so forth.
I'm good to do another topic.
Mm.
Hexic,
Yep.
do you want
I
to
guess we could
chew on
jump.
this one a little bit more?
I guess we could jump from here.
Okay.
I have a feeling that somehow it'll always come back to the core that I'm trying to solve here, no matter what the question is.
This one, I suspect, might not. Before we do, I just want to double check it. You both have the time to hang out for about the same amount of time as we've already gone.
Yeah. I
Okay.
can go till like 4.
Okay.
Yep,
Yeah,
same
that's
here.
fine. Okay, so this one we'll cool it down. It'll be a lot sillier. All right. I feel that was another reason why I kind of wanted to move on. Is I would feel remiss if I brought on a guest and I was like, no, let's answer a real question and not a stupid silly one. So we're gonna go the other way. We're gonna give you a chance to answer something really really stupid.
Yeah.
Which armrest is yours at a movie theater?
Ooh.
We're in the middle, right?
Well, we're gonna have to answer
Yeah, are there people
no
on
matter
either
where you're
side?
sitting.
Right. They still got a right side.
We'll
Let's
say in this
see.
theater, all the seats are have armrests, and they share the armrest with the ones in the middle, and the ones on the end basically have that extra one on the side in a way. Just like movie theaters before they started making all those like comfy bucket seats that recline or whatever.
Which one's yours? Is this the same as like in airplane seats? I haven't flown too many, but
Sure.
like, is it the same thing?
The only real difference is that in an airplane you have far fewer seats next to each other. But yeah, basically.
Cool. Let's
For
see.
me, it's my left.
Your left.
Yep.
Okay.
Because I mostly drink with my left hand, and I like for my left. I like for the hand that I drink with to have the armrest for some reason. I can't explain why.
Okay.
That's
But
your
what if
preference, or that's the one that's justifiably yours? Let's say.
Ooh, that's a good question.
That's what we're really trying to ask. Which one ought to be yours? Which one should do you have is
God.
appropriate for you to have?
Oh no, it's anarchy. It's warfare. You fight for all of them. No,
Yeah, that was my
nothing
answer.
belongs.
Both of them. Fuck you.
No,
Fight
both.
me.
What do you mean? They're all fight me. I don't give a shit. Like it's this is survival of the fittest. Like I'm sitting for 2 hours watching a movie. No, this is all power game.
All
Which
right.
I get what I get.
But it seems like you would fight more strongly for your left armrest, though.
Yes.
Okay.
But if you give me both, I'll Machiavelli. I'll take both. I'll take everything you give me.
All right, but
I
what if
want all of
you're on the far end where there's no one to your left? So the left one is guaranteed. No one's going to fight you for it. But the person on your right is going to fight tooth and nail, and like they will like I don't know, they'll rest their head on the armrest if that's what they have to do to make it uncomfortable for you. Are you fighting for the right one, or are you just like, you know what, the left one's cool?
You know what? Honestly, depends on how good the movie is. If the movie's good, I probably won't care. If the movie's bad, I'm fighting. I'm gonna be
I'm
entertained
bored anyway.
one way or
Let's
the other.
go.
I'm bored. Fuck it. We're fighting. I don't like it. Depends.
World Star.
What if it's like
yeah,
a
World Star. Exactly. We're world starring over this armrest if the movie sucks. I will be entertained.
Now, does it change depending on who the person is in that seat? Like, what if if it's a loved one of yours, or if it's some stranger, or a stranger's 4-year-old kid? Does that change at all?
A very well behaved one.
Whew.
The 4-year-old, and at least my answer to that, they're not going to win that fight. So I don't know. I feel like I got a leg up on that. Move over, Timmy. Cry to your mom. I don't care. Uh,
If you're on the far edge, that would imply the furthest armrest is absolutely yours no
it's
matter what, right? Without
uncontested.
dragging into, the guy across you can't be like, oh, that's mine. It's like, you know what? And you lose that fight. It's like, is it really his? But then it's like, what does that make of the one next to yours, where you actually have the one armrest guaranteed, let's say, or 99%. It's like, do you really have to, like, are you really justified in fighting for the other one as well?
Yeah, you already have one uncontested. People in the middle have to fight for both, don't they?
Like,
Yes,
if you're on the edge,
that's
it's
right.
like, is it
Yeah.
justice, or like, you know what I mean? Is it like, is the word against it?
I think
Okay,
though,
I think I
if
have
you're
it.
sitting on the edge, that uncontested armrest is your compensation for having a worse view of the screen. I think that's like
Mm.
that you were owed that. So like that's like your reward.
But like, does that make it neutral? So then fighting for the other one, it's like fair game because it's neutral, or is it like you're not on the positive here,
I think you're
and
still a
therefore you
little bit of a
shouldn't fight
dick.
for it?
I think you're still a little bit of a dick if you fight for the other one when you have one that you don't have to fight for. But I still
Wait.
would.
We are fighting though, right? Like everyone
Let's
showed up at
fight.
the exact same time.
We are fighting though, right?
Like,
We
Well,
fighting.
does
we're
it
doing
change?
this, right?
We're
Does it change
doing
for
this.
you if someone shows up before or after? Is it just the first person in the seats gets both of them and
Like,
like
let's
everyone
say it's a
else?
whole ass theater,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like you and two other people or something.
Mm-hmm.
The one guy mind his own business way over there, but then this guy decided to just be like next to you.
Sitting right next to you. No, that guy can you. That guy does not deserve an armrest. It's like if you're at a urinal, you don't stand right next to someone if you could leave a space between. That's just etiquette.
But like, let's say I do it because I can. Like, hey,
Oh well,
buddy,
you're gonna lose an armrest. That's what's happened for that.
lose a penis too. Like,
Whoa, hold on.
oh no, I got what I asked.
That's
I'll
how I
kick
got
you
my
in the dick. I
collection.
don't give a fuck. Okay, what are we?
Oh snap. You're in a lot of danger.
Dude, oh, hold
Taking
on.
this one.
Guys. I have the
Oh,
definitive answer to this question.
Oh no.
let's go.
Well, we want to talk about it.
No, I do. I swear to God. I have the definitive answer to this question. Okay?
Yes.
Okay. Constitutional amendment. I get both armrests all the time. But people who like romantic comedies can go kick rocks. That's the I feel like this is the full circle like answer to this question.
Uh, you know what? Weirdly, I don't think that solves it. I don't know. Maybe I'm the strange one on this.
Oh man, I feel like I'm chilling.
We'll have to debate what I means. It's like this was written 20 minutes ago. Like,
I
come
know.
on. It's
Uh,
clear as day. It says I.
Hexic
it's
is
like
like fucking. I'm fighting
this
you anyway.
constitutional amendment is written in fake
In
popcorn
Zuma
butter.
language.
Like it's not like. Are you sure this is an amendment or like? And it's written on the back of a receipt for a movie ticket. Like it seems like it was
It's
just kind
fucking
of.
on the bottom of a popcorn bucket. Like,
You
are
like
sure this
racing
is-
outside. You're like writing it. Like you just write this amendment, show it to the guy next to you. This is it's my armrest.
Oh
I
my
don't know what to
God.
tell you. It's the law.
Fucking hilarious.
Uh,
Mm.
all right, all right. Now let's go to that scenario again where you're the one on the edge and you're like, well, I have this uncontested armrest. Now, what if I roll up and I'm like, screw it, I'm sitting on the stair and I try to take that armrest? I have no other armrest.
Ooh.
Shouldn't that be mine?
No, you can suck an ass. Why don't you have a ticket?
Who says I didn't have a
Fuck
ticket?
you. Why are you sitting on the stairs?
Because I want to be close to you, Calvin.
That's weird.
I guess the real question is. I guess the real question is, how are these rules like? How do they pop up in the first place? Like, let's all not dick around and understand that that is absolutely wrong, you know. But then
Yeah.
it's like, how did we actually grow these assumptions,
Mm.
these theater moralities or
Ooh,
etiquette?
theater
Let's say
ethic. Let's
theater ethic.
theater ethics in this essay. I will. Let's talk about theater ethics.
Because I'm thinking
It's
also
like,
like,
can you talk at the theater when everyone's talking, or is everyone messing up together and it's fine? Like,
yeah, it's like self-justifying. It's like, well, everyone else. It's like when you were in class in school, you know, like your teacher's like, everyone needs to stop talking. It's like, well, I can talk because everyone else is talking, but everyone else in the room is thinking the same thing, and it goes nowhere.
and it takes a reset, turning off the light
Yeah,
and then
right.
turning it back on, and somehow that
Maybe
works.
some
Oh
corporal
God!
punishment.
Somehow you started this conversation with metaphysics, and Hexic is putting theater ethics in the context of Kant's categorical imperative. Jesus Christ, how do we get
That's
here?
what we do here. That's what
I
we're
know this is
here
wild.
for.
What a ride!
It's baked in. I
What a
think it's.
fucking ride, man! What a wild ride that was.
Because like
I like.
oh, go
Do
ahead.
you have more stupid questions? These are funny.
I do, but I think we got more out of this one. I've been thinking about this one for like
I don't know if we're
weeks.
done
I've
yet.
got more on this.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Because like I think Hexix's right is about when you show up seems to have kind of an impact on stuff, right? If you arrive to your seat first, even if it's a full theater, if you will get to your seat first and you set up and you have your both armrests, the guy who shows up after like to sit next to you, you're just like, whatever, I already got these armrests. But
Hmm.
there then like if we feel like that is at the very least typical social convention, then you have an issue of like, well, what happens when you have a ticket like not with your friends or whatever, you go to see a movie by yourself and both people showed up before you and claimed the armrests? You can't have
Ooh,
none, right? So which one is
no.
appropriate to fight for?
Oh God.
Or do you just fight for both and just see who
I would
see what comes out?
honestly, I feel like if there's a non super troll answer to this question, it's your dominant hand. The hand that you primarily eat and drink with should probably be yours.
What if you're not eating or drinking?
Still, you lean on your dominant hand. If the
Okay.
movie sucks, you want to be able to put your head down and shit. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I feel like that is the kind answer to this question.
I think there's also
So
something to be
ban
said.
on lefties.
Whoa, hold on there.
Whoa, whoa,
Whoa.
whoa! I'm a lefty.
Hey,
Hold on.
me too.
Let's
It's like my right hand's here, but their left hand's their dominant
chill out.
hand.
Chill
So we're
out.
kind of
But
Chill
if
out.
we
like,
just, but Hexic, if we switch seats, then neither of us has a problem.
but my ticket's for B17.
Yeah, he is.
I
Damn,
mean,
he's got a point.
ah,
He's got a point.
you got me.
We got
Why
to
should
trade
he
though.
have to suffer? Why should he have to suffer because we're freaks, Adam? That's
Why should
real.
I trade?
I think that's what he's asking.
All right, we figured
Why
out
should I
which
have?
group is getting the back of the bust. It's left-handed people.
Yeah, Hexic's like, we burned you people at the stake back in the day. I don't know why I have to give you my arm seat. Like,
Maybe because you burned us at the stake back in the day. This is payback.
oh
We should
my
have done something
God.
about it.
Movie theater
I'm
reparations. I love
saying.
this. I
So
love
it's in
this. I
direct
love
inverse
this.
proportion to your marginalization as a
God
person.
damn.
God,
Full
this is the fear
circle
of
again.
this is the fear of retribution that white people are afraid of.
And then revenge happens, and then it keeps getting worse and worse, and then we have to close down all the theaters because there's too much violence.
It's basically
There
Israel
wouldn't be
Palestine
violence if
for
you
left
just
and
gave me the
right-handed people.
armrests.
If we just acknowledge that I was totally here first.
Okay, fucking Netanyahu of movie theaters. That's not how that works. Fuck.
Uh,
If I have the armrest already. We're
All right.
assuming that's different timing, right? I guess.
Yeah, it's got to be, right?
I feel like the different timing makes it clear because then it's like you're imposing on territory, so it's something like you're technically trespassing now. So I have like the full justice to it being more of a quote unquote self defense here as opposed to like murder. And
Stand
so
your
then,
ground.
okay,
Just stand your
stand your
ground law
ground
in a
laws
movie
in
theater.
movie theaters.
I like it.
Like
I like
someone
it.
tries
I
to
like it.
nudge your arm off the seat and you pull out your 9 and just go, "What?
I like
Get out
that.
of here."
Excuse me, it's called your blicky.
It's,
Thank you.
you know, I do have it on very good authority that it is called a blicky.
It's called
And
your
sorry, did I
blicky.
say very good authority? I mean the worst possible authority.
The worst fucking possible authority imaginable.
For context, is a friend of ours. He likes saying
Is
the
an
word
idiot.
blicky.
Is what he
He's
is.
very dumb.
He's an idiot. He's-
I do have some more wrenches to throw into this though, because now, what if you're going with a partner to the movie theater? Doesn't it make more sense that you would lean towards each other and therefore away from the opposing armrest, thereby
Jesus.
sharing the one in between you and kind of giving up the ones on the other side.
This is absurd.
What
Yeah,
if,
that's
like,
what we're here for.
I know. I love it. I love how absurd it is, actually.
what if we go all hitch and whatever, and we're only supposed to move as men 10% or something?
We go
Ooh.
90,
So she's
they
got to
go
lean a
10.
little more. What was that last part?
I think it was like we go 90, they go 10, so we get most of the armrest. Your significant other gets almost none of it,
Oops.
and they can fight for the other side.
Is this
Yeah, I
the Will?
technically didn't watch that movie. They kind of like blasted the commercial a few times, and I'm like,
Gotcha.
90-10 or 80-20. But like, wouldn't it be more what, like, the man being more movable, let's say, because he has that magnetic force, making him like ideal, I suppose,
Is
and
this what we're
therefore he'd
calling
be
the Will
leaning a
Smith?
little less. What was that last part?
I was saying we can call this the Will Smith corollary.
I look forward to writing papers.
Who's gonna say
about
it? Who's gonna say it first? I gotta
love
take
it.
one for the team.
Uh,
Anyways, you get into my chair, I'm gonna slap you. Yeah, there you go. Got it out of the way. Thank you. Sorry.
You know what? Look, when there's
you
when the
keep
man's
my
right, he's right.
armrest name out your motherfucking arm. Anyway,
you can pry my armrest from my cold dead hands.
You can keep your hands to yourself. Slap.
Right. 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 Fucking hilarious. Oh my gosh.
and I do have
That's
one
great.
last wrench to throw in everything. And that
All
is
right.
actually what I do, but I didn't realize I was doing it until this question came up. So I got to interrogate my own habits. Is I take both, but just the back half. So
I thought
you
said
can
one.
have both on the front half, and by front half I
What?
mean closer to the screen. So you can
What
like
are you talking
if
about?
you lean forward, you could put your elbows on the front of the armrest. I won't be there, but I will be on the back of the armrest on both sides. Which, by the way, if people alternate doing that, everyone gets access to both armrests. Just half of each.
This is
That's dumb.
absurd.
There's
This
no
is
personal property
absurd.
anymore.
Is this the
So
craziest
What
dumb.
is
one?
this fucking communist shit? What are you talking about?
Is this the craziest one? I didn't think it was that weird.
Yeah, that what? What are you doing?
What, you
It
don't
does-
want both armrests for everybody?
What are you're advocating for pure anarchy? What?
Well, no, this is systematized, all right? This, if anything, this is a tech bro solution.
Systematized bullshit
It's
is what it
boring
is.
and dumb and annoying
This is
and
systematized
resentful.
horseshit.
I
is what it
legitimately
is.
did not expect this amount of hate for this. I thought this was a good
This
idea.
is all-
It solves
this is
everything,
what you
doesn't it?
do
We
at
all
movie
are
theaters.
Achilles fan
I'm
now.
never fucking going to a movie theater with you.
Incidentally,
This is how
you
you
have
roll?
before, and
Yeah.
that's what made me think about sitting on the stair because I've done that once before. I don't know if you remember, there was some movie we went
That's
to
hilarious.
that was
No, I don't remember.
turbo
actually.
ass. I don't even remember what the movie was. And it
Turbo.
was so bad it was like opening weekend and we were the only 5 people in the theater.
Oh yeah.
And so I was
Oh
like,
my god, what
can't
was
I just
that?
sit on the
Now
stairs? Who cares? It was one of those, I think it was a movie where it was like, it was billed as a Tarantino movie, but it actually wasn't
Oh
him.
yes, I know exactly
I
what
think it
you're
was like Man
talking
with the Iron
about.
Fist or something like that. It might have been a different movie.
Yep.
It was so bad you could see the moment in the film where they ran out of editing budget.
It was indeed Turbo S.
I just remember a scene where like there's an interrogation scene towards the end of the movie,
Yep.
and the camera is at table level, which is fine because you're looking at the guy in the face. Then he gets up and the camera just stays there, and you just get crotch. You just get, here's your crotch shot for like
I remember this.
5
I remember this.
uninterrupted seconds. But while we were there, I was like,
remember
well,
this.
there's no one here. Why don't I just sit on the stair and like hang out with my friends? Except the projectionist got mad at me.
Dang, I totally remember this shit. Actually,
This was a long time
Unfortunately.
ago, but you know, such as
Yep.
it is. So really, the like front half, back half is the worst possible
I
suggestion.
feel like
there was just
I don't know
not
why
even
that
a
just
hint
feels
of. Oh,
that just feels like a whole lot of nah for me.
there was
I
a
don't
lot
know.
of
I feel like
visceral rage in the response.
because it's just like now you're just. I feel like you're just creating more problems. I don't know why.
Well, aren't I solving all our problems? You get both armrests. It's just like the front half.
More rules, more problems.
The famous
Yes.
the famous phrase, more armrests, more problems.
Mo armrest, mo problems. Yeah.
We should have
We
the
need,
fewest
like, a
possible.
whole-
Actually, you know what? No armrests for anybody. We're just removing armrests for theaters, so we don't have to worry about this. Everyone cuddle up
We
in the
can lean
middle
on
of
each
the
other.
row.
Oh my
Perfect
god.
harmony.
Exactly.
Oh gosh, that's fucking hilarious. Jesus.
You know what? The cup holder, we're getting.
Oh,
You know, you don't get the cup holder and the armrest because we're getting rid of the armrest. Instead, it goes like in the center of the seat, so it's between your legs. Deal with it.
mm,
Like a
mm.
horsey?
We're going with the
Like
worst
a
possible
horsey,
solutions to everything.
like a horsey.
Actually, we solved the problem. Everyone, instead of sitting in the seat, sit on the armrest.
Yeah, that's one each for everybody. I
And
think
then you get
you
one
make
more
more seats,
person in the
maybe.
row.
Oh
It
gosh.
makes space for like one more, though, right? Or
Yeah,
am I getting my
exactly. You
math
get
wrong?
one more person who can sit on an armrest. That's how you
So
make
that's
more
like
theater
17
space.
whole people for like the theater. More money, I guess.
I mean, that it's been
Ooh.
working for airlines. My, it's like
Dang.
we get more people on there if we pack them into shipping crates. You know.
But has
We're
it
just
been
gonna take
working for airlines?
I
Has
mean,
it though?
I guess that's
it
fair.
is working. Nobody's standing up for it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
everyone.
fly
Yeah,
anyways
No, I
instead
everyone
of
am
just
standing
sitting
historically
up for it
for.
loves
because I don't have room to
airlines.
sit.
We could probably like boycott for like 20 hours. It'll probably get solved quick enough, maybe. I don't know. You still gotta build the damn things, but I don't
I
know.
just like the thought that it's working for airlines, as if the benchmark for
Famously,
comfortable, all agreeable travel is airline. Maybe
yeah,
I just fly too much.
it's all right. I'll
Fuck,
just
I
use
fucking hate.
I'll use the alternative, all the high speed rail that's in this country.
Oh, we have a lot of that,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's inexpensive
Robust.
as well.
Yeah,
Very robust system. Yeah, it's
yeah.
great.
For those of you who don't know, there was a like years, I think decades ago, there was some law of like if train companies want to do high tech rail or high speed rail, they have to invest in this safety precaution. So they all said, nope, fuck you, and just
Yep,
didn't do it. So we have
eat a
no high
dick.
speed rail in the United States just
Nope,
because they like, nope, we're not going to pay to make sure they're safe.
literally because eat a dick. That's the whole
Yep.
reason. Yeah.
Which is,
To
I
be
guess, what this whole
perfectly fair,
armrest
is
discussion
it
comes
has it
down
been
to.
like calculated that it was more trouble than it was worth, or we're just assuming
Oh, it's
it was
not.
just
I
to
mean,
be
this
like
is one of
hilarious?
those like. This is a very like difficult to argue one Hexic. Like high speed rail is more efficient, more affordable. It's better for the economy. It's better for the environment. If you do it right, it's like a slam. It's like it's like a slam dunk. It's cars. There's nothing worse than freeway cars in the
Yeah.
modern world, and yet that's kind of what we have.
And planes are pretty close. So they're like really bad too.
Planes
They're
are close.
really inefficient.
Planes are close. Yeah,
But trains are
Mm.
crazy efficient. It's just like, and like
yeah.
maybe the companies like in the short term we're saying it's not worth the investment cost or whatever. But that's just like short-sighted thinking. And mostly, let's be real, the way American
Agreed.
companies work, they're like,
Yep.
oh, what's that? You want us to pay for something that's not strictly necessary for our bottom line? Fuck you.
Yep.
So the same reason they
I
get
guess
mad
we
at
should
any
just have more.
regulation. What's that?
I guess I'm just like, maybe we should have more courage and not using the subpar thing.
Well,
Stick it out. Live in
that's
the cave for a
ambitious.
second.
How ambitious of you.
Yeah.
Yep. Bet. Let's do this.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the kinds of things can happen. Lots of people can get around for, come together to do one unified action that really shakes change.
Imagine.
General strikes. But
Just imagine.
ugh,
Yeah, I know.
imagine a
Hell yeah.
I
general
was
strike.
thinking more boycotts or whatever.
Yo,
Yeah. Oh no,
Boycotts, etc.
I know. But like, another thing is like the general strike. People talk about like, if all the CEOs in the world stopped doing their job, that like for a week it'd be be annoying, I
meh.
guess, but it wouldn't be that big a deal. If all the workers stopped doing their job
Oh
for a
my
week,
god, are
that's
you
like
kidding me?
civilization ending terror. Like,
Yeah.
that's like nothing could be worse.
Yo.
Uh,
Um,
I'll probably highlight my ignorance here, but like, is the CEO like the leadership of the whole thing, or
yeah, the head
Kind of.
honcho.
like everyone makes it seem like they literally just sit around? You know what I mean?
They do
Yep.
stuff. They definitely don't do as much as they're credited for doing.
But like, are they essentially like the navigator of the ship or
Yeah.
the driver? Let's say.
They are the most beholden to their to their shareholders. So they are they are responsible generally for the overall vision and strategy of the company.
So it's kind of like they lead the ship of which their uh, journey was commissioned by.
Basically, and they're like they lead the ship, but the point of the ship is to make the most money for the people who paid for the building of the ship.
Yeah.
So
as
without the
long as
driver,
you're doing right by them, good job.
Yeah. And they like
okay.
legally required to do right by them. So like
They have a
sometimes they're
fiduciary
like
duty
not
to
even
mistake.
like legally allowed to do things that would be better for the world because it would be worse for the
No,
stockholders.
no, like that's for example,
Define
you know what Aetna is, Hexic? It's a health
I don't
insurance
know what it
company.
is. Oh, okay.
Mm.
Like
Wait, what was
do you know what Aetna is, the company, or
that?
like Blue
No.
or like Blue Cross? These are like health
Ah,
insurance.
right.
The CEO of a health insurance company, if millions of people under their health insurance plans die, but they record 1,000% profit margins, they probably won't get fired. But if it's reversed
They
and
will.
they have the healthiest user base of any insurance company, but their shareholders are bleeding money, they'll probably get fired.
If they bleed enough money, they couldn't exist, though, right?
Well,
To give
yeah,
health service.
yes,
So
exactly.
there's like a fine
To a
balance.
certain extent, yes, that is true. Yes, that is also true. Or you could just do single payer and not continue with this charade.
Would the CEO be considered an employee then? Just
Technically, yeah.
perhaps the highest ranking
Yes,
one?
it is the highest ranking employee.
CEOs often are also owners, but
Yeah, or
yeah,
majority owners of some kind.
yeah,
Yeah,
but they in as much as they do work, they are also employees.
Interesting.
But a CEO doesn't like necessarily have to do work, if I understand correctly. Like I think like like if like I think Twitter is like has a CEO that's not Elon Musk, but he's just still doing the CEO things. I'm not exactly sure.
yeah.
And to like
Mhm.
consolidate everything because of like also the scapegoating that happens. You know, the CEO is the guy with 10,000 armrests, and you have your one armrest, and he says that the marginalized person is trying to take your
Idiot.
armrest.
Stupid.
And you're like, but
Mm.
you couldn't possibly use 10,000 armrests
Oh my
because
god.
that's not the point. It's that
Is it about
the
using it?
person with the marginalized person with no armrest, he wants to
Oh
take your
no.
armrest.
Okay, but how does the Will Smith corollary fit into all this? God damn it.
Wait, everyone's an employee slash moviegoer, right?
Uh, I guess so.
Like marginalized, whatever. Is like, are they the people
I
that
don't
are
even
not
know.
employed in the company
I don't
slash
even
not
know.
watching the movie
Oh,
outside the theater? They'll go to the theater.
this metaphor is not sensical. I think making
I
sense
don't
of
even
it
know
is
where we are anymore.
is at
I
your
think we got
peril.
it. I think I'm following.
Shit, you
X
gotta
is
tell
like,
me
I'll
I
get it.
didn't. No, it's like
No,
a meme that happens a lot of like people will say like it's like here's the CEO with their 10 million cookies. You have your one cookie, and he says, "Oh, you see that immigrant? He wants to take your cookie."
yeah.
It's just
CEO does
like
that?
a
Amazing.
scapegoating thing.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So I guess
Now,
in the paradigm where we say all the armrests are ours, that makes us the CEO. And in fact, you know what? Let's go one step further. All the armrests are mine, and I don't just mean the two next to me. The ones 3 rows back, those are also
All
mine.
of them.
Every
The whole
single one.
fucking thing.
If I put my
Fuck
feet
you.
up between the chairs onto your armrest in the row ahead of me, you should be grateful that I put both of them on that one armrest and not one on each side. All right?
You're fucking lucky. You're
I
lucky.
come sit in front of the. Never mind.
How is that suggestion more reasonable to you than just take the back of the armrest or the front?
I don't know. I'm in like a theater Machiavellian mood. I don't actually explain it. But
I thought that was reasonable. There
Hmm.
was just so much hate. It was like the worst possible
I don't know why. That was like,
reception.
no, that's stupid. That's the one I don't like.
So angry.
The only one I don't like.
All right.
Let's see.
Alternatively, there's n people in a row in a movie theater, and there's n plus one
Oh, good lord.
armrests. So what would be most fair is if each person gets what is it? N plus one over n armrests. So you get your one armrest plus a fraction of the next one, which means
No one
that
told me
that's
there would be
for if you're
math.
on the end, and then if you're
Do
next
I
to
have to
them, you
solve
get
for
the rest
X?
of that, and then a little bit more of the next one. And then we'll have very strictly drawn lines on each of them to make it clear.
Do I have to solve for X? I wasn't told there'd be math.
Yeah, pop quiz, by the way. What is the percentage of each armrest that you get? Please,
Now, when
on
you
a
say
piece of
fraction,
graph paper, draw out the dividing lines between each armrest and who gets which part.
Man, I'm gonna draw a T-Rex. But
That's funny. I like that.
so when you say a fraction of an armrest, is that like at all times or the alternation of one or so armrests?
Well, I was
It's
thinking
like,
at all
are
times.
you leaning one at all times, or like do you get tired and then switch to the other one if it's available, and then that makes it open for the next guy to have his fraction of it, but then you can only jump back in when he gets tired doing that, and then you jump into that one, and you just
So
kind of
basically, you get both.
have that little dance.
You get both armrests for 5 seconds, but then for the next 5 seconds, you get neither armrest, and then for the next hour, you can alternate between them. Is that basically what you're suggesting?
Not suggesting, it's more like here's a dance that'll happen, and maybe someone's gonna win a little more than the other, depending on all the factors that you could list.
Oh no, I
But
bring a
it's like,
stopwatch. We keep people to a time. I'm getting the same amount of time on that armrest, all right?
but yeah, I'm just like, what if I don't want to lean on my left side anymore, and then I'm just gonna lean on my right side, and either I already have it or it's available, and so I take it, right? Nobody's there, but then it leaves the one I leave behind open, and then that person sees that it's open, just like I saw that the one that I switched to was open, which probably belonged to the next guy, and so then it's like, oh, is this some like interesting dance we can play without having to count the seconds or like, impose a second, and it'll just kind of naturally happen. And sure, there'll be like unequal times per person, I guess. Like some person might end up having so much more time on their preferred one than somebody else, but then it's like natural feeling, like everyone managed to dance, I guess, without having to what.
Well, I was gonna say like
Like it
it
figured
seems like
itself out is what I mean.
yeah.
Like I guess I would prefer that, which is kind of what we have. Is that what we mean by X plus one or whatever?
Oh no, I was
one
being
and a bit.
oh no,
rest.
what I was suggesting was very stupid. No, I'll explain what that was in a minute. But
Or like I put my hand but not my elbow on one of them, and then I put my whole elbow to hand, fingertips, whatever, on one of them.
But like the what you were talking about of like, all right, you lean on one, then you lean on the other, and if someone moves in because you're not there, okay, that's I mean, it is how a lot of it ends up operating. The risk, of course, is you fall victim to the paradigm that we started out with, which was like, screw you, they're both mine, and as soon as I take it, it's mine, and you have to like fight me to get it back. That's how you end up with no armrests, friend.
Right.
I guess,
Right.
but if your spiritual pressure is not strong enough to like, correct that, it's like, you lose. It's okay, I guess.
And there are good
you have to fight
strategies
another day, maybe. And if not, it's like, well, man, damn, get good, I guess.
And there are strategies for reclaiming the armrest. Don't get me wrong, right? Someone's arm is on it. You just put your arm on theirs, and like, all right, we both have it now. And if that makes you uncomfortable, you can leave.
Like half
it makes it
are
better
like on
if you
top of
lean
his
into them.
arm as an armrest.
you gotta be unashamed.
Yeah, you gotta lean over.
You gotta live into
maybe
it.
put your head on their shoulder. Make it weird. Don't do this. Don't
make it real weird. Come on,
No, what I was suggesting with the fractions, it was very, very stupid. It's like, all right, if there are 10 people in a row, that means there are 11 armrests. So the person all the way on the left gets one whole armrest, but then gets a tenth of the next armrest. And the person next to them gets the remaining 9/10 of that one and 2/10 of the next one, and it continues over. It's
but like, how do you claim 1/10 of one? Is it at the same time as somebody else's 9/10?
No, you draw a line. All right, we're measuring it exactly. All right, we're gonna get some measuring tape. You show up to the movie theater like everyone else does with the measuring tape and a stopwatch, and you measure out exactly how much.
My time. Okay.
How much of
your? Here I was like imagining, like I have my pinky, and then the other guy got the rest of the arm.
Yeah, exactly. You can put one pinky on the next one, right? But the next guy, he could put like his whole hand on there, I hope that was. Has this been sufficiently stupid enough for you?
This is great. This is a lot of fun. I was actually gonna say I gotta go pick up Thea, but this has been a blast.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, if at any point you have to leave, if you have to leave right now, you can. I mean, you can just dip whenever.
Okay. Hey guys, thank you very much for this. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for coming on.
You're wonderful.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good one. Okay.
All right, bye.
But
All right, later.
mm,
Now, if I remember right,
I gotta
Hexic, you
leave
said you have
soon.
to go like somewhat soon as well. I mean, we can finish
Yeah,
up with this topic if there's anything else you want to say about it, but we can also.
yeah, we can finish this off a little bit 2 hours later. Let's see. I guess it all just comes back to if you had both armrests in the first place,
Hmm.
it's like technically you're wanting uh, you claiming that as yours. It's more of a infringement of his territory, you know.
Hmm.
So in a sense, he's got the justice to like claim it as a self-defense thing, as opposed to
But why was
not that
it
we're
his
gonna
in the
go that
first
far.
place? All right, my people ancestrally held this armrest as ours, and his encroachment in the first place was a violation of our right to armrest.
Oh,
Uh,
that's interesting. I see it like okay, that's very interesting. There's this weird. I don't know if it's a valley per se or just like bing, it changes. But like if he was strong enough to take it anyways, then it's like the justice was on your end first. But then if he happens to take it and you agreed to take it, to have it be taken, in that I guess there's not much else he can do and just let it happen. I guess
mhm.
it's like well. Did that exact justice you had before switch to him, or it's like a new justice where it's like the what is it? It was trumped by the Darwinistic aspect. I don't know. I need a better word for this.
Well, see, that's just it. I was gonna what I was exactly what I was gonna say is it's kind of Darwinistic. It's a little might makes right. They had the will to claim the armrest, isn't it theirs? And I was like, I don't know.
I guess it's only theirs when they actually make it theirs. But anytime before that, it's like you have the full high ground here,
Hmm.
moral high ground, anyways.
And it's
I
funny too because I'm
guess.
I'm I'm really hoping that after this conversation, everyone both participating and watching is going to be just massively self-conscious about which armrest they use in a movie. Just like,
Oh no.
is it acceptable? Is it okay for me to use the armrest? Well, if I do I have to like switch off to give appropriate amount of time? But what if they take my arm? I really hope that now people think
Or the opposite.
way
It's
too
like you
much
know
about
what?
it as
I'm gonna
opposed to
take what's
not at all.
mine.
Because I think
Like the
most
opposite
people,
happens.
I think most of the time people just do whatever, right? Like they do what seems right in the moment, and like sometimes they're rude about it, and sometimes they're gracious or whatever. But people just do whatever. I really hope that now anyone who's watched this is. Instead of thinking not at all, will think way too much about it. That just makes me happy on the inside. Just like,
Awesome.
why am I sweating so much over such a stupid question? Because this affects your real
Well,
life. All right, you, the viewer, I'm looking at you. All right,
these
this
are the
affects your
questions.
life and who you are as a person, which armrest you choose to use. All right, this is not something to
And
be
can you
taken
take it?
lightly.
And can you take it? What does it say of you that you can't, or can, or do, or don't?
Yeah, it's like, are you being gracious by giving up the armrest, or are you being weak? Are you being confident by taking an armrest, or are you being rude and invasive?
Or some
Impossible
weird
questions
inverse
to
of all of
answer.
them. It's like you're being confident, therefore you hand it over. It's like I got this. Like it's fine.
I'll take it back, don't you worry. When you least
Turn the
expect
other
it,
cheek.
I'll elbow my way in.
I'll
Alternatively, you could just use the back half, and the other person uses the front half, and then everybody gets to. All I'm saying is it solves the problem. Weirdly, it was the most opposed proposition in the whole conversation, but I'm saying it solves everything.
It's just I don't know. Imagine it visually. I think everyone would have to sit like at 45 degrees to the screen or something. Like I don't understand.
That's pretty good.
And I gotta turn your head
Yeah,
like
you
counter.
just sit sideways and you get like you get this like cross cut of each one.
Looks like tile.
What like I guess while we're at it, we could try to think of the worst possible solution to all of it. Though I don't know if it gets much worse than you just sit on your armrest. That's the one that's yours. Uh,
Mm. Let's see. The
oh.
worst than sit on one armrest.
Yeah, like what?
Let's
Oh, I guess I
see.
guess worse is also the like screw it. There are no armrests anymore. We're taking them all out. I mean, the best
What if they
possible.
make like preacher curl pads and then you can just like lean forward or something and be like, I don't know, laying forward or something?
I mean, the best possible solution is something that I've seen more and more in theaters of just like everyone gets two armrests. They're like everyone gets a chair, and they often have this like recline function and like
Right.
it's not you share an armrest with the person next to you. It's you have two distinctly your armrests. At
Right. I
which
forgot
point,
because I haven't been to.
at which point though, you now I kind of want to be that guy who leans over and takes the extra arm. Like it's clearly your armrest, but I'm leaning over for it because it's my will to power is strong enough.
That's a good point because then it's like you weren't there technically. And let's just assume the tickets mean you can just go in and choose whichever you want,
Sure.
But then you happen to sit here out of anywhere else next to somebody who is already there, but also encroaching on what would have been your spot. And it's like, is it your spot if you were never there, never assigned to it? Because
I mean,
obviously it's your spot, but I'm like, how do we get there? How do we justify
I
this?
guess we can think of it a little bit like about how this is gonna sound really stupid. How ocean borders work. Basically, you don't like countries claim territory of land, but if that land is adjacent to an ocean or to any body of water, like international law is like, well, you have this radius from any land that is not international waters, it's your country's waters. It basically is to ensure that you can get shipping through to any water adjacent land that a country has. And so it's kind of like that. It's like the armrest are the international waters. But as soon as you claim the seat, the land that is adjacent to it, you have a range of claim onto these armrests. At the very least, for the ones where you have where each seat has two armrests. So while someone can like go into international waters and lean into an armrest that isn't anyone's, as soon as the seat is claimed, suddenly it becomes someone's and they got to back off.
I kind of took that as like when we went to the water analogy, it's like um, you're now invading on some other country's waters by like taking both armrests.
In a way, but and by the way, that's
Like
actually a
just because the
real.
fog of war is there, because you can't see the other guy because he's not there yet. Let's say, but he's going to be there, I guess. So it's more like a fog of war thing, I guess.
And by
It's
the
like we don't
way,
know what exactly is.
this is
Mhm.
actually a real problem in the world. China, I think in the South China Sea, keeps making these artificial islands so that they can expand their oceanic territory. I'm not kidding. This is real. Like they make so they're like, look, we have this island that's part of China, so like this distance from the island should be our waters and not international waters. But the more they do that, the more they restrict the ability for like the Philippines and I forget what other countries uh, ability to access naval routes because suddenly that's not international waters anymore, it's Chinese waters. And so like, well, are the shipping routes allowed to go through them? They have to negotiate with China, so on and so forth. It's like a real problem actually.
I'm
um
like, nah, fam, those are ships. Screw that. Only
it's
through an act of God where a volcano shows up and then makes an island, and it's like you claim it first, I guess.
but
And
at the very least
you
with
manage
like
to keep it. It's
the
like, okay, maybe, but
at least with the movie theaters, I hope we're talking about the same thing because I am talking about the situations where each seat has two armrests for it, not like
yes.
where you share one. Like
Yeah.
we have discrete units of claimable space. It's not like with international waters of like, it's not like they don't come in units of size or whatever. It's but with the seats there is one seat and the next seat and you can claim exactly one seat to sit in at the very least reasonably. I mean, you can if no one's around, I guess you can like sit in one and put your legs up into the other. But as soon as someone wants to sit there, you're kind of a dick if you don't move your feet. Um, and at which point, with like that understanding about the discrete units of claimable territory, the like adjacent waters of the armrest seem like reasonable as extensions of that because it's not like you'll ever lose your armrest. You will always have armrests for you. The only question is whether you can restrict someone else from having their own armrest, which in this situation doesn't seem reasonable.
Hmm.
But
So the
if we're sharing
front
armrests,
seat.
everything I just said is sort of thrown out the window.
So to clarify, the front seat has the same properties, like the seat in front of you
Mhm.
has the same properties as the seats next to you. So you can take the other armrest as much as you can take the headrest, I guess, of the one in front of you. Is that what you
Well, I'm
said?
saying
Or
is kind of the opposite of that. Is what I'm saying is like
oh,
if you're sitting in a seat and like you encroach on another seat's armrest, if
mhm.
it's unclaimed, well, you're not hurting anyone. Who cares? But if someone goes to sit in that seat, maybe it's a crowded theater and that's just the seat they have left. At that point, like the territory they've claimed, the seat, it comes with the implied additional range of the armrest, which I'm equating to like the territorial waters, and um, and so like you kind of do you do a little bit need to back off, right? Like that's kind of associated with that.
Hmm.
And the thing that makes it reasonable as opposed to what we were saying with the like international waters issue is like, well, these are discrete units of measurement. You are, as a moviegoer, reasonably allowed to claim one seat and the adjoining armrests, but claiming multiple seats is not really reasonable, and you're not going to claim like a seat and a half, like a country might claim as like 100 square miles or 150 square miles or whatever.
Wait, so if the waters are however much radius and it's the same for every country, landmass, whatever, it's
I
like,
think
wouldn't it be
so.
the same as the theaters?
It's kind of the same. That was the analogy I was drawing. It was like, yeah, it's a little bit like that, the territorial waters thing. Like the borders of the United States extend, I don't know exactly how far, some number of miles out from the shore. Those are
Or
territorial
like it
waters of the
changes
United
depending
States.
on the country.
I don't know
Like
how
some have
far it
more
is.
claim
I
to it.
think it's by international law, and I think it's consistent, but it's not perfectly so. Like, so I'm not exactly sure, and that's why China is able to do what it's doing, is because like, well, we are allowed these. Like, well, we have this island, so X number of miles out is our waters, right? And we'll just keep making islands in international water.
I guess it just has to go to super court, I guess. But in principle, the principle that allowed for this convention to be made in the first place, I'm pretty sure it's not. I guess what I'm trying to get at is the principle that seems to share this with the seats in the theater.
Oh, I was just saying it seemed similar. I'm not saying like
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just, in the sense of like,
I
well,
think it's the same.
you don't
Something like that.
the thing you claim is the seat, and you and like and as an extension of that you get the armrest. Like those are the outer edges of what you can claim. uh I don't know, I'm just being very silly with it,
No, no, I
which is
like
what
it.
we should be here to do, right?
Yep, yep, yep. Hmm. Let's see if I have any little contingencies, tangents, wrenches for this one that we haven't covered yet.
Yep.
Let's see.
I thought for sure I had the answer. Don't worry. I'm never getting over that. I'm gonna die mad about that one. I thought it was so
Oh
clean. I
no.
was just like, there you go, boom. No, absolutely not.
Ooh, there's layers. Yeah, I guess personally, my take on it then, like, to sum it up, I guess I don't have any wrenches. My take would be something like somehow there's like some natural law going on here where it's like this is my spot, and now it's like property, I guess, or territory, and then it's like any encroachment on that, it's my job to defend or allow as a guest the other person. It's like, let's say you even take like a loved one to a theater, and then it's like, well, you have the armrest or whatever, but then it's like you try to negotiate as you allow it, or you can be hilarious and just like steal it or whatever, like take it or just impose your will or whatever. But then it's like, wait, I'm getting lost. Did we ever cover that bit where
Yeah, I
it's
think
like
so. Like at the outset of like
we did
whatever you can
cover
claim.
the guest aspect of it?
Oh no, no, not a guest aspect. I'm not exactly sure what you mean.
I guess it's like, okay, so you have the right, let's say, to defend your territory,
Mm-hmm.
but you also have the right to allow people in it.
Oh sure.
But I don't know if that changes anything or if that's included in the you have the right to.
I think the thing that's built in there is the thing that I have an issue with of like, well, what is your territory and what makes it your territory, and that you're allowing someone in as a guest as opposed to it's actually their territory and you're no longer taking up the space in it. Because that's
This is
the hard.
again with
Yeah.
double armrest or one armrest?
Oh, I thought you were talking about one armrest. With double armrest, well, like obviously, yeah, it's exactly as you say. Like it's clearly yours if it's attached to your seat, and then like if you let someone else in, which you could, then like sure. But with the
Yeah, I guess with the
single
loved ones, it'd
armrest,
be something like with a single armrest. It's like there might be an assumption based on, I guess, your dynamic with them. It's like if you're the what stronger of the two or something, it's like they might have already seated the middle armrest or something. Or they decide to be spicy, I guess, and try to play with that and take it first or something. And then it's like, I don't know if, like, obviously, no, not obviously, I've seen some shit. It's like, maybe, like, any contestant would be handled with more, like, negotiation, like, in to start with, something more gentler, anyways, and as opposed to, going straight to World Star. But it's like, does it solve itself in a sense because negotiation is possible as opposed to like a hard rule imposed by the theater or whatever?
I just
I
thought of
don't know.
another way we could think about it that makes things that maybe could help, but more likely is just silly and hilarious.
Yeah.
Is like, okay, if you're all the way on the right, then
Mhm.
clearly your right armrest is yours, right? So we can say
Mhm.
that your claim to that is 100% uncontested and reasonable. But the
Yeah.
further you move right, the less reasonable it is. The less percentage claim you have to your right armrest until you get all the way to the left where you have the least claim to the right armrest but the most claim to the left one. And they're both on this spectrum, this like sliding scale of it is most reasonable for you to take the one that is uh, furthest I guess furthest away from the center. It doesn't help anything actually, but it is a funny way of thinking about it. Because like when you're in the center, if you're just like, oh, I only have a 50% claim to either armrest, and like, what do I do? But
Mm.
maybe like, what do you think? Do you think it's more reasonable to claim an armrest that's further from the center in that way?
You did say you were like on the edge seat, right? I
Well, on
guess
the
that
edge
might
seat,
clarify a
it's
bit.
obvious, right? Like on the edge seat, the one that's
Okay,
next to
okay,
the
so it depends.
aisle, you definitely have that claim to. And so it seems like And so I was like, well, on the other side, you have 100% claim to the other armrest. So maybe as you progress along the row, you lose percent reasonable claim to one side and gain percent reasonable claim to the other.
And it just changes as you shift on your seat, right? Is
Where it's like, well,
that
I'm
what you're
talking about
saying?
like not as you shift on your seat, like as you move seat to seat. So if you start all the way on the right hand side
Oh.
and then
Mhm.
you move one seat to the left, what I'm saying is like your claim to your right armrest has diminished slightly, but your claim to your left armrest has increased by a proportional amount. And it keeps going the more seats you move over until you're all the way on the left side, in which case you have 100% claim to the left armrest, but less claim to but almost no claim to the right.
So the claim would be the center person gets neither.
They would basically have an equal claim to both right and left, but that claim is like 50% kind of thing. So they're like reasonable in
Dang.
fighting for either. Uh, yeah, I don't know. This isn't actually helpful. I just thought it was a funny way of
No, no,
looking at
no. I feel like this is important somehow,
it.
but
That's what I thought.
it's
The more I
like
talk about it, the less I think so.
I don't know. The dumber we get, the more we're
The more
almost there.
insightful we
Like,
are. You know what? True. That's the whole point of these
and
things.
then it's like when we're like, this is too dumb. Like, no, we're just getting somewhere.
You're on the
I don't
cusp
know.
of
And I'm not even sure because it's like we didn't get there. Right?
it's
But
horseshoe theory. If you
who
get dumb
knows?
enough, you circle back around to being really smart. So yeah, I guess the person in the center then would would be yeah, would have like an equal claim to either one. By the way, the total claim that you have isn't 100% either. I put it in those terms because like it's easy to understand. But my thought is your total percentage is 100% plus 1 over the number of people in the row. Because
I
that's
just
how
gotta be
many
like,
armrests you have to divide between you. So if there are 10 people in the row, a person in the center has a 55% claim to either armrest.
I guess I'm just remembering the time. I'm just remembering the time I totally had a cyst on my bum, and it's like on one side, right? So I had to lean this way, and then it's like I can't lean the other way, obviously. But then I'm like dead center or something, and then it's like I think the thing you're proposing probably implies that it's rather rigid, and it's like I think the
Oh, it's
easiest way,
incredibly
the
stupid.
way we've been doing it, and is the solution probably to a lot of things,
Oh,
is
this is
something
not a real
like
solution. I just thought it was funny.
just leave it. Well, I guess the one I'm trying to solve it, I guess. Unless I got a dip soon, but it's like the the percentages, let's say, of the claim
Mm-hmm.
are dynamic. They can still be measured, maybe, if you really felt like doing so. But like the more you lean one way, the more the claim increases on the side you're leaning on. But it's dynamic in that you can change the
Oh,
direction
sure.
you lean on to your ability, I guess. And then it's like mine being 100% on the left side, being my trouble side was the right side, then it's like obviously I'm gonna need more claim, let's say, on the left side and not mind the right side. But if I'm like perfectly fine, it's like, well, depends on how I feel like shifting my weight, I guess. So
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, okay, I will see 10% to lean just a little more to the right. Why not? And then back and forth, back and forth. And that's assuming that leaning at all doesn't like let my arm go altogether, you know? Because it's like, if my arms are still there, it's like, can you?
Oh, hello?
I guess it's time based. Never mind, we cleared that up. But I guess it still remains. It's like dynamic, and there's no need to like regulate that dynamism. It's just like some weird spooky force that makes it like this is justice, I guess, and it'll sort itself out later. It's like one day we'll be judged or something. Like, oh, that's a jump here. I'm trying to bridge that jump here, whatever
One thing
that
I
is.
was realizing as you're trying to work that out for yourself was that, like, if I took the system I was just laying out, which again, it's not a real suggestion, of like percentage claim to each seat or whatever, you could argue then like, well, then shouldn't the armrest go to the person with the greater claim? That makes more sense. Until what you realize is that ends up the ramification of that system is that the person in the center gets 2 armrests because remember the total percentage claim needs to be greater than 100% for any given person. But so the person in the center will have a 55% claim, arbitrary number, maybe 51% for both armrests. So they get both, and then everyone else leans away from center onto the other armrest, which seems like, well, why does the person in the center get also an extra armrest? They already have the best seat. So as I'm finding flaws in this intentionally stupid paradigm that I laid out.
Hmm. Well, the good news is we solved it by adding armrests, having 2 armrests for
Yeah, right.
everybody, and now we just got to work on the airplanes.
Yeah, exact. Oh my god. Yeah, maybe airplanes can be comfortable again. I'm like,
Utopia.
I'm 6'3" every time I fly. It's like it's such a nightmare. I don't fit in any. I remember going on flights where I fit in the seats and like oh, that's the other thing. One of the things I used to like doing was sit in the emergency row, or they're like, you know, you have that little bit of extra responsibility, but you have leg room. So like as a tall guy, I would be like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll accept that. I think they figured out that people like doing that. They charge you extra for those seats.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really dumb. It's like what's that? You want to be comfortable? Pay us. It's like I'm already
You want to
paying
be a
you for
hero?
this. Yeah, it's really weird. It's very, very strange. And then you have this
Zero
weird
test.
perverse incentive of like the people who want to be sitting there are the people who are just willing to pay to be comfortable. And it's like, is that the person you want? Does that correlate with a good person to have as the like as someone we're relying on in an emergency? I'm not saying specifically no, but like not necessarily, right? It's very, very strange. But yes, we have to solve the airline problem. Otherwise, I think we've run this about its course. We've talked
Yep.
about it for a while. I know you have to go kind of soon, and honestly, whew, I'm a little tired, just in
Yeah,
general.
I think we got it mostly.
Uh,
Mhm.
just I hope anyone watching will think way too much about this now. Anytime they're in a similar situation, and maybe you'll give more credence to the idea that one person takes the back half, one person takes the front half. You alternate. I don't know. I'm just saying. As much as y'all hated it, I like that idea. All right. Well, thanks Hexic for doing this with me. I think it went well with the additional person. We'll definitely try to get
Mhm.
more people on in the future.
Yeah, good stuff.
All
Mhm.
right. I'll talk to you later, Hexic.
All right, bye.
Bye. Wow, that was a lot of fun. That was the first time we went through two questions, but I'm glad we did. We ran out of stuff to say about the first one. To the person who submitted it, that's not because it was a bad question. It was just because we're just happened to be on the same page about it. Maybe if you want to pop in the Discord and pose additional challenges or like questions like that might actually get some disagreement from us, that would be very welcome. I liked the question. It was just a matter of, well, we all kind of agree that like that the downside would suck, but that all that means is that we have to fight for it going forward. Maybe you intended the question to say you couldn't fight for that change going forward, in which case, well, we probably should have wrestled with that, but we just found there wasn't much to say. Oh well. That said, I'm glad we went through a couple of questions. I'm glad the first time we had a guest, we didn't only do a serious question. We also were intensely stupid and asked a very silly question. I hope everyone enjoyed that. I definitely had a great time. We'll try to get more and different people on in the future. Maybe we'll have Calvin back. Maybe we'll get other people. We'll see. It is definitely beneficial to have more people weigh in on these subjects, even if the questions like the ones we had today are not ones that we were able to tease as much out of as in the past. But that's okay. It's just about the practice, right? It's not about get it. It's not about the destination. It's about the journey. So, such as it is. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your great weekend and a great Thanksgiving because I will not be streaming next week. I'll be out of town for Thanksgiving. So hope everyone has a great week, and we'll be back not this next Monday, but a week from then. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you next time. Bye.